Storms off toward the west. There's just a couple of downpours around Columbus and a few up toward Marion. But the worst weather right now, and the only warning that we're seeing right now, is from that particular storm that is really centered on Knox County. So we're going to take a closer look, as we've been doing, and really get down into the area that we're most concerned about. This storm is actually moving east. If you are south and west of this particular storm, mentioned a couple of communities around Centerburg, you're in the clear in Centerburg. If you're south and west of 657 or 314 south of Sparta, just for some frames of reference, you are fine. Still, probably some rumbles of thunder and some disruptive weather around, but the threat of a tornado has moved on from you, is moving off toward the northeast. Quick update then, this storm still producing an observed tornado, which means it was reaching the ground. That goes until 9:15 p.m. And one of the things we're going to do in real time is just take a look at some of the details of that particular storm. And what we're looking at still is not quite as tight as it was before. I'm going to shift over to the Cleveland radar for just a second. That'll give us a little closer look at some of those areas of possible rotation coming from Cleveland. Might be a little far away. That doesn't even show up. Maybe I was clicking the wrong button there for a second. But as we look at the opportunity, for some of this rotation within the storm, we'll just go to the relative velocity. You do see a little bit of some pinks next to the greens. Not quite as compact or as tight as it was at one time. Beginning to span a little bit, as sometimes these tornadic storms do cycle back and forth. But it's still showing some rotation within that storm. And where you have these greens and the yellows, or reds and the pinks, excuse me, next to each other, that's where we're seeing that counterclockwise rotation. And that's of greatest concern. Joining me also this evening is meteorologist Michael Behrens, who's been tracking this weather for a good part of the day today. And Michael, we didn't see a whole lot, if anything, aside from some flood warnings earlier. And this one certainly popped up, not out of nowhere because there were thunderstorms, but the fact that this one storm is spinning is a little bit ominous. Yeah, definitely spinning at a pretty good rate here as well. We've been tracking the rotation in this storm, and also the potential for that tornado was confirmed tornado when this warning came out. I want to go ahead and show you a view here on Max 2, the backup radar PC here. Show you what we're looking at inside the storm. A couple ominous signs that I'm seeing here on the radar. This would be the hail. You notice we're not seeing too much of that hail potential, but if you switch over to take a view inside the storm here for what we call correlation coefficient, or areas where you're seeing objects in the sky that aren't rain, things that don't belong there. We're seeing what you would call low returns, or dissimilar objects in the sky. That area in there near 5 corners where we're seeing that weakening, where you get these lighter colors in here, that's where we do have that possibility of some debris in the air on the Cleveland radar here. It's not the only radar that we're seeing this in either. If we switch over to another view here on our radar, we'll go over to the Pittsburgh view of the radar here as well. You'll see a similar picture develop over here when it comes to 5 corners. These brighter colors, the colors that are not uniform, indicate that we could be seeing some debris lofted into the sky. And typically when you're this far away from the radars, you might discount that to some degree, but the fact that we're not seeing the hail potential in this storm, and we're seeing this pop up on multiple radars, would be an indication to me that we are definitely seeing at least something lofted into the sky. And that would go along with the reports that we got when this warning came out that there was a spotted tornado working its way through the region. We'll switch back over now inside that particular portion of the storm to take a look at the latest view there. I think we switched over to, switched to a different view here. Let me get back inside that storm where we take a look at what we're looking at near Mount Vernon, that tornado-warned storm. I want to go ahead and switch back over to the view of the winds inside that storm. You can still see what you would call that couplet there, that area of winds that are going in 2 different directions. That is still working its way near 5 corners, now working its way off toward the east of 5 corners. And you're definitely still seeing rotation inside that storm, Jerry. Yeah, Michael, thanks a lot for the update there. It looks like the opportunity again for this tornado warning to be carved out a little bit in the back end. That's happening right now, and that is some good news. We're looking at still the chance for some of that disruptive weather, of course, coming in. Centerburg is in the clear, but where we're seeing this green and this red or this pink next to each other, that's where we're seeing that rotation. And the reason that's important, and some of these other tornado warnings we've had earlier in the year, they're radar indicated. This one was observed. That's why we're giving a little bit of heightened awareness or some particularly dangerous situation. So we're going to get down very close to the center center of the storm, still keeping it on this radar perspective for you, but just letting you know, again, somewhat rural areas. If you've ever been to this part of Knox County, we're looking at Five Corners. If you're in and around Five Corners, south or east of that, please seek shelter immediately. This is not the normal radar scan that we show you, but we're just showing you what we're looking at and also why we're breaking into coverage this evening. This tornado warning, while it has been carved out a little bit from the back end, still impacts much of Knox County. So Five Corners, areas over 661. If I'm going to try and zoom in one more time and try and get a little bit tighter in there, I don't know if it's going to capture any towns or any cities, but we'll give it a shot and maybe move things along a little bit further. There's Sycamore Road. We're really in close right now, maybe a little bit too close. Let me zoom that out for you to give you a little bit of perspective. Again, we're in the south central and southwestern parts of Knox County. If you're just joining us this evening, this tornado warning on the back edge of round number 1 of those strong storms that just came in. This radar updating in real time. And one thing I want to notice is we're not seeing the reds and the green right next to each other. We're seeing them spreading out just a little bit. That is what we're looking at right now, and the opportunity for some of those rotation within the particular storms. We're going to get you back to what we would refer to as a normal radar scan that shows the areas where the deeper reds and the orange, something that you're probably more accustomed to seeing. And this is ominous. As Michael was saying earlier, these storms have a history of very heavy rain, inches of rain in some spots. In this particular case, also some hail. So I'm going to zoom out a little further just so I can actually put a track on this particular storm and show you some other locations. I got an update for you. It's been moving east at about 20 miles an hour, maybe turning a little bit. So let's get it just in a position where I can put a track on that for you. And that shows hopefully some other areas that are under the gun. And keep this in mind, please. If you are under this tornado warning, there's an update for you. Let me just pop this on.
Actually, we do have another tornado warning coming in right now. New tornado warning. If we can switch over to Max 2 here, radar PC. New tornado warning, Delaware and Union counties. That's going to go until 9:15 tonight. That new tornado warning just coming in as we continue our coverage here. That's for a storm that was located, again, working its way through portions of Delaware County. Getting the information here, located over Richwood, moving east at about 25 miles per hour. Radar indicated tornado warning now for portions of Delaware and Union counties. Would not be surprised if part of Marion County gets added to that shortly.
Yeah, Michael, appreciate the update there and a quick thinking on getting this tornado warning on the air. We've been watching this particular storm right now. We're going to put a track on this one for you. Moving the map just a little bit, and this particular storm, again, was moving a little faster than its predecessor. There is the northeastern corner of Union County. There's the southwestern corner of Marion County, just northwestern parts of Delaware County to give you perspective. Richwood under the greatest risk for this particular storm right now. Prospect and then Waldo under the gun. Green Camp just to the north, Marion a little further off toward the north, and Radnor just north and west of Delaware City and Delaware County. That's kind of the southern edge of this particular tornado warning. And Michael, what was the speed of that storm?
East at 25.
So we're going to put a track on that, and we're going to give it the cone and not make it, we're going to try and keep it very tight here and then move that east at about 25 miles an hour. If I can get out of the way, that begins to show, if we can get that, another tornado warning coming up. This is happening pretty fast right now in real time. Got a couple of layers on there. So let's just back up if we can and then get out of this particular segment. And I'll just hopefully just zoom out just a minute to show us what's going on there.
Yeah, and Jerry, that is the extension I was talking about. Marion County also included as well as portions of Morrow County. That's for the same storm that we're watching there, working its way through Delaware and Union counties. That's going to be until 9:30 for the same storm that we're tracking there right now.
Yeah, so to keep in mind, we've got 2 tornado warnings right now, actually 3, as this one continues to be expanded off toward the northeast, Michael. So we still want to put a track on that for you. Let's go back just to get the regular tracking tool. This is moving east. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, actually. Give me 1 second here to zoom out because this storm is moving a little faster than its predecessors. Again, we're looking at southern parts of Marion County, northeastern Union County, extreme northern Delaware County for this particular newly warned tornadic storm. This one is radar indicated, but it's still quite serious, which is why we're breaking into coverage this evening. For those that are under the storm, this is multiple instances instances over the past couple of months where we've seen tornadoes taking a very, unfortunately, a similar track to this one. We're going to put this out about 25 miles an hour, starting right there south and west of the PN Prospect. That's where the weather seems to be the worst and most threatening right now. So if we move that out there, we're looking at locations in and around Cardington, Edison, Mount Gilead, and St. James, 9:27, 9:33, at 9:36 and 9:44 p.m. If you are in any of those locations or around those locations, this is your heads up to please seek shelter, initiate your action plan. Hopefully you have one. If you don't, it's very simple. Just stay calm and put as many walls between you and the outside as possible. And if you have a basement, that's certainly somewhere that you want to go to. If you don't have a basement, you want to simply put as many walls between you and the outside as possible. So we're going to put things into perspective quickly for you. We now have 2 active tornado warned areas, one in Knox County that goes until 9:15, just coming south of Mount Vernon. The other one is extended, as Michael predicted, moving out of Union County and extending all the way across south central parts of Marion County. That one goes until 9:30 p.m. So let's quickly go back to the storm in Knox County. That's the one we first came on the air just shortly after 8:30 as we're watching the weather develop. That one again goes until 9:15 p.m. Not only is the opportunity there for a rotation in that particular storm, but we're seeing hail a little less than 1 inch in size. So that's something that also is somewhat concerning for us, but the main threat will be that particular opportunity for a tornado. And this storm, I believe, is still moving east at about 25 miles an hour, so 20 miles an hour. So let's get this track on this one. Not to forget our friends in Delaware County. We've got multiple warnings going on at once, so we're going to kind of toggle back and forth between the two of them. We're going to put this just in the southwestern corner of your screen, or the bottom left of your screen. Maybe zoom out a little bit to give it some perspective. This storm just south of Mount Vernon right now. That's something that we're certainly concerned about, headed toward Gambier and the areas that just north of Martinsburg, north of Utica and Centerburg. You're in the clear right now. Areas around Howard, I would seek shelter immediately if that's a location, if it's around where you live, or maybe you have relatives or friends. Don't text them, call them. Express the urgency with this particular situation. You know somebody in central and south central parts of Knox County, that's what we're looking at here. And here's the track for you as we put that on and moving east at about 20 miles an hour, going from the back edge of that storm. There were not a whole lot of populated areas the first time, a few more showing up now. Talking about Gambier at 9:11, Howard 9:24. We're looking at Zuck at 9:37, Newcastle at 9:47, and Tiverton at 9:51. Anywhere even within those vicinity of those particular towns, please seek shelter immediately and do what you can, do what's necessary to keep you and your family safe. So those are just the one area we're watching in Knox County. The other area we're looking at right now, we're going to go back to Delaware County. And this area, if you're looking in the broader picture right now, bigger perspective, not a whole lot going on in terms of severe weather, but the leading edge of these two obviously is interacting with a boundary or something that is causing the atmosphere to spin, and that's why these 2 tornado warnings have just popped up literally in the past couple of minutes. This one right here is on the leading edge of a line that has thunderstorms stretching back toward Bell Fountain and north of Urbana and north of Springfield, but this is the one we're concerned about right now. There's Marion, there's Delaware, and there's Marysville. We're talking about extreme northeastern parts of Union County, central and southern parts of Marion County, and extreme northwestern parts of Delaware County. Outside of those particular areas, while the weather may be disruptive, certainly something that you want to pay attention to as these tornado warnings have popped up very, very quickly. The first one being observed in Knox County. This one right now is not observed, it's radar indicated, but it still is something that we're taking very seriously. And Michael, around me again, it's at 25 miles an hour from this particular storm.
Yeah, 25 miles per hour for that storm over there in portions of Marion, Morrow County.
Northeast?
East.
East, thank you very much. We'll get that out to about 25 miles an hour. Step out of the way. Waldo, Ashley, Cardington, and Mount Gilead between 9:08, 9:24, 9:32, and 9:42. So again, issuing the piece of advice, even though you might not be directly in this particular cone, if you know somebody that's in or around any one of those towns that we just mentioned, if you are in Morrow County, fully expect that this may be extended further off toward the east, as these storms have had a history of doing prior, and kind of expanding and accelerating a little faster to the east. So this is the cone we're looking at for that tornado storm, and that tornado warning is in effect until 9:30, a little more than a half hour from now. quickly going to take a look and hopefully find a little bit of information, take a deeper dive inside this storm. What we're looking at here is the velocity inside the storm, where oftentimes we'll see the colors next to each other, which is unusual, but as a key to the meteorologists as to where we will see the the green and the red together, and where they're close together, oftentimes it indicates a little bit of rotation in the storm. That rotation normally happens 3, 4, 5, 6,000 feet up inside the cloud. It's when that rotation makes its way down to the ground. That's when we actually have a bona fide tornado, and that's what we're concerned about right now. And you can clearly see green on one side around Richwood, and then you see the red on the other side, and that simply means that this area is rotating in a counterclockwise fashion, and then doing so eventually, and we used this analogy before like an ice skater, that broad rotation inside the cloud, as that gets smaller and tighter, oftentimes that will accelerate and then drop down to the ground, and that's oftentimes, unfortunately, when we see those tornadoes. So I'm going to hand it back over to Michael for a moment, get you back over to a somewhat, again, a normal radar scan, which clearly draws your attention to that area just east of Richwood. I'm not ready to call the all clear on Richwood or Leesburg, Michael, but it looks like areas around Prospect and Waldo are under the greatest threat in the very near future.
Yeah, certainly the part of that storm we're keeping a very close eye on, working its way in through northern portions of Union County, or I should say Delaware County, now that it's moving out of Union County. We did get from the National Weather Service about the same time this report was issued, a report from a spotter of at least a funnel cloud in that area. It was not reaching the ground at that time. That report came in about 8:50 related to this storm that's working its way up into portions of Marion, Morrow, and northern Delaware County, and that's going to be continuing the area that we watched. You can see the latest radar scan there on your screen right now. We can switch that over to Max 2 real quick. We'll get a better view inside that storm where the winds are getting that rotation right now. You can see that up to the northwest of the Radnor area, to the east of Richwood, and this area of the system is going to be working its way off to the east, slightly northeast. That's why portions of Marion and Morrow County are included inside this particular tornado warning that we have right now. As far as what this storm system is doing, it's going to continue to track off again about 25 miles per hour off toward the east. The most dangerous portion of the storm likely to move northeast of the Radnor area. We'll keep a close eye inside this particular portion of the storm. See if we can put that storm track on here real quick for you as well. We'll get back to the latest image here. We'll put that on your screen in just a moment. There we go. We'll get that switched over. Again, to Max 2 there. We'll show inside that storm again. That area near Radnor is what we're watching for, and it's going to be moving off toward the east, slightly northeast, about 25 miles per hour. So it's going to be over toward Waldo here in the next little bit by about 9:25. So you can see it's moving at a pretty good clip. It's going to be working its way into Morrow County within the next hour. We're also keeping a close eye on several areas inside these storms, including that other tornado warning that's over toward the eastern side of the 10 TV viewing area. We'll move the map over that way as well and take a latest look inside that storm. Still seeing similar signs of rotation. Southern side, south of Mount Vernon there, north of Utica. They did change the designation on this latest update, so they dropped the observation tag from that. So it's possible they have somebody watching the storm, because this was a storm that initially was warned as a confirmed tornado that was sent in as a reported tornado on the ground observed, now scaled back to just a radar indicated tornado. We are still seeing those areas of rotation on the southern side of that system too. I want to go ahead and take another quick look inside some of the debris that we see inside that storm as well. We'll switch back over to the view here from the Cleveland radar. This doesn't look quite as ominous as it did, say, about 10 minutes ago when we started to come on the air. The more we see a uniform color in here, the more this is all one color, and we're not seeing a lot of those brighter returns toward the area of rotation, the better sign this could be that maybe that rotation has at least ceased for now. I would say, Jerry, this definitely looks like some positive signs to me when it comes to what we're seeing inside that storm over in Knox County. But again, that could quickly change. Yeah, absolutely, Michael. One of the key things we kind of touched on was that the trends, and these thunderstorms have a
its tendency to cycle or pulse very quickly. So when we're talking about looking at some of those trends, we're literally minute by minute as we're going through with time. So we're looking at this particular storm, which just about 20 minutes ago was about 25 miles further off toward the west. Centerburg and Sunbury, Galena, you're in the clear. But one of the things, and just overall lightning is often a measurement of the storm's intensity or which way it's headed. An increase in the lightning coverage and intensity would almost surely mean that that thunderstorm is intensifying, whereas a decrease in the amount of lightning, generally speaking, is a sign of the storm stabilizing or actually pulsing or weakening down. So that's just one of the variables that we're watching. You mentioned a couple other ones. The debris has not been showing up, which is good. It means it's not making it the way to the ground, which is fine, and hopefully a little bit better news. But we're also looking at this storm beginning to, just for appearance sake, looking a little bit disorganized. But again, we're not in the business of calling the all clear. We'll leave that to the National Weather Service. What we are doing right now is tracking this particular storm for you. We're going to do that, and we're going to draw this track, still moving east at about 25 miles an hour. Again, not showing an area just south of Mount Vernon, so a little bit of concern there. But this storm has been a very similar, very consistent track and moving off toward the east. So around Gambier, around Howard, around Zuck between now and 9:41. That, by the way, is after the time the tornado warning is set to expire. Newcastle and Tiverton between 9:53 and 9:56. Again, just looking rather close. Not a ton of populated areas in and around that part of Knox County, but we're going to zoom in. Nevertheless, of course, Mount Vernon, very well known, right along 36. Perhaps you know somebody that lives around or east of Five Corners. I believe Five Corners, you're in the clear. Mount Liberty, you're in the clear. Mount Vernon, you're not in the clear. Areas around Gambier, you're under the direct path of this particular storm, and maybe a couple of roads or some landmarks for you, or to the east of 229. There's 36, a very popular west to east route. There's 13, it drops all the way down into Licking County. So just southeast of Green Valley, specifically south of Mount Vernon. That is the area that we're most concerned about right now. Again, not a ton of towns and communities around there, a lot of rural areas, but don't want to discount that as we are, again, very, very close to south central parts of Knox County in this particular tornadic storm. This earlier was observed as a tornado, both by someone on the ground, and I believe Michael might be correct in that this might have actual eyes on the particular storm, and they're able to provide updates to the National Weather Service in real time. So we're going to put a pause on that particular storm. Again, just a final note, quick note, Mount Vernon southward, central and eastern parts of Knox County, seek shelter immediately. The guidance is the same. Lowest floor, basement, interior room or closet. Put as many walls between you and outside as possible, and oftentimes it's not a joke to take a helmet or something to cover you. Most people are not swept up and carried away by storms. They're injured by flying debris. So if you can minimize your exposure to that flying debris, that will increase your chances of making it through the storm unscathed. So that's the advice right now for central and southern parts of Knox County. We're going to refocus our attention for the moment. I want to make sure we're not missing anything else. That line of storm stretches clear back into areas around Dayton, around Bell Fountain, around Logan County, where they've seen some exceptionally heavy rain. But the focus of our attention right now will now turn to areas just to the north of Columbus, just southern parts of Marion County. You do see these areas outlined in the yellow and the black. This is northern parts of Delaware County and south central parts of Marion County. Union County is in the clear. That is a little bit of good news. Richwood, you're probably not having an easy go of it right now, but the tornado warning has been cleared for you and moved off toward the east. These particular tornado warnings, the one in Marion County, one in Delaware, kind of one and the same. They go until 9:15, so still about 10 more minutes. And we're going to stay on covering these particular storms, interrupting your programming if necessary in order to keep those folks and their families safe that are under the track of these particular storms. So we're looking again at the cluster of lightning right now, kind of an indication of where the core of that storm is, moving east at about 25 miles an hour. We are going to unfortunately capture a few locations which have already seen their fair share of tornadic thunderstorms earlier this year. Ashley, 925, Cardington, 933, Marengo, 942, Chesterville at 9:57, and Lucerne at 10:03 p.m. So even though some of those communities that we mentioned are far beyond the boundary of the current tornado warning, still, just consider yourself having a little more lead time than your friends and neighbors to the west. So the tornado warning may not be extended that far east, but just be on guard. So Closer inspection right now, we're going to go back to more of a standard radar scan for you, and that's just kind of simplified things. Yes, we're seeing the lightning out there, and that cluster of lightning is something that is just one facet of this particular storm. But closer inspection right now, we're just going to drill down right along this area, which is not highly populated. There certainly are towns and cities which you're familiar with. So if you live around Prospect, you should be listening and hearing us from your basement or interior room. Same for Radnor, same for Waldo, some areas that we're getting into Marion County. South of Green Camp, again, no picnic for you, but you're fine. This thunderstorm that's producing this potential tornado is well to your south, right along literally the Marion-Delaware County line. So we're going to move east of Richwood right now and just move a little bit further east and trying to track this storm and give you some heads up right now. There's the little cutout or the carve out into Morrow County, which is included in that. Cardington and Mount Gilead and Ashley. Even though you're right on the edge or just outside of this particular warning, we're giving you a first heads up that this storm, if it continues its current path, its strength, and its intensity, you are under the threat in the path of this particular storm. Lightning, extremely heavy rain, some hail and around an inch or less, and of course the main area we're focusing on is that particular tornadic threat for you. Closer inspection right now, clearly your attention is drawn, as it is ours, between Prospect, Radnor, and Waldo, where we're seeing this area of deeper red. Just can't say with a high degree of certainty that's exactly where the tornado is if it's occurring, but this is obviously where the strongest part of the storm is. Just literally along the county line, there's 47, there's 203, there's Route 4, and then to the east there's 23. Very well known and very heavily traveled. This center of the storm cell just about to cross over 23. We are going to take a quick second here and look at some possible information, the radar scan coming in. And this actually, Michael, is showing a little bit of yellow and discoloration, and that overlaps almost perfectly with that core of the storm in the deeper red. So if what we're looking at right now is an indication that if the storm is producing a tornado and it's reaching the ground, we'll see this discoloration as the radar is picking up objects that are not precipitation, whether it's a leaf, a shingle, a twig, a brick, or another object that's not precipitation. We may get a signature like this. So that's a little bit concerning, as I don't remember seeing that just a few scans ago.
Yeah, didn't see that on there a few scans ago, and that's something I've been keeping a close eye on over here as well. Watching pretty much the same situation we saw over in Knox County. We're in an area where we're fairly far away from the actual radar source, so we're looking high into the clouds and being able to confirm that on multiple different radars. I want to go and take a look at Max 1 here. You can see inside that storm working its way into portions of Delaware County. This is popping up on a couple different radars here as well, that area of concern where we're seeing the potential for objects in the sky that aren't raindrops here. And that's where we're watching, again, northern Delaware County, where we are seeing some of those weaker returns come in. And that is being repeated on at least a couple of different radars here. I'll switch over to the radar source out of northern Indiana here, and that will show us part of that system as well. Let me go ahead and give you toss magic track back on Max 1 for me there, Jerry. That's where we're watching that possibility again of those weaker returns in northern portions of Delaware County. I'll switch over again to that northern Indiana radar, take a close look at the same area inside this particular portion of the storm. I don't think I can quite grab that one from here at the moment. We'll switch to the Wilmington instead. That'll give us the view inside the storm. Not quite as concerning up there toward Radnor as what we're seeing off the Cleveland radar there. But what we are watching for is whether or not this could be debris or hail. Again, this is a bit far away from the radars to get a good picture inside that storm. But what we are seeing out there with this portion of the storm in Delaware County is at least a little bit more of a hail return than what we saw over in Knox County a little bit ago. So with the distance from the radar, it's a little bit hard to tell whether or not we're looking at hail or looking at potential debris in the air. What I would say is a good sign, the Wilmington radar for perspective is down toward Marysville. That means the beam's coming up toward Radnor. We're not seeing as much of a return of the debris potential off Wilmington. The Cleveland radar, it's got to shoot through that hail, and that's where we are seeing a little bit more of that debris, and I'll give you an example of that just now. We'll switch back over to that potential debris inside the storm coming off the Cleveland radar, and we're seeing seeing that weak return. Remember, it's got to come through that hail cell here, so that's not saying the threat for the storm is not still present, but at least it's possible that we're not seeing a tornado on the ground. And that's what we were seeing with the storm spotter reports when this warning did come out, that there was, again, that spotted funnel, but not quite to ground level. So I would say that at least is some good potential there. It does look like we have a new tornado warning coming in right now as well. See if we can get that information to come up here on the screen at the moment. Let me reset here. We'll get a bigger view across the region and see where that latest tornado warning is. Jerry, what information are you seeing on that?
That's southeastern Knox County again still continues to have that storm until 10:15 p.m. This now is radar indicated, and the storm is moving east and slowing down a little bit, unfortunately, at 15 miles an hour. So same storm. This is out of the National Weather Service office in Cleveland, and that's what's giving that particular update on that warning right there. If we could take a look at, go to weather backup or max 2, I've got that teed up on a couple of things. One thing that's actually drawing some attention, we talked about before, those areas right now of rotation, and that's what we're looking at where we're seeing that green and the red next to each other. That's still the case with this particular storm in Knox County. And again, we're shooting maybe 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 feet higher into the storm, but that doesn't mean that we're not capturing that rotation in the middle of the storm, and it might be reaching the ground. And that's, of course, an indication and why the National Weather Service is looking at let me get the right radar here is looking at the opportunity for that circulation to continue, and that's why the tornado warnings continue as well. If you're just joining us, it's almost 9:15. We've been on the air for about 45 minutes tracking a couple of tornado warnings. The most recent update comes from Mount Vernon. That particular tornado warning, that goes for another hour as that storm literally is put on the brakes, going from about 25 miles an hour to 15 miles an hour, slowing down and moving to the east. The other tornado warnings we're watching right now still showing some rotation. Remember, the first image I showed you moments ago had that red and the green close to each other right along the county line between Marion County and Delaware County. That's the area we're watching closest. So we're going to take our time and go through each one of those rather closely and allow this to give at least some advice and some detail to these particular areas. Waldo, Radnor, east of Leesburg. Leesburg, you're in the clear from the storm, but Ashley, you are not. You're actually right in the path of the storm as it's moving east still at about 20 to 25 miles an hour. So we're going to put a track on that for you and zoom out just a little bit because we're getting to a little more populated areas right now, and we're zoomed in at pretty tight just to show that area of concern. You saw the radar scan going by, capturing those higher cells and those higher returns for you, and that's just something that is drawing our attention to this particular storm. In addition to the fact that it's rotating, that is not good news, and that's been the case right now for the past couple of scans. So we're going to track that for you, moving east still at a pretty consistent speed at about 20 to 25 miles an hour. Right there is where we saw the rotation on the radar product, so we're going to draw that out. If you are in the path of this particular storm, even though at the moment Morrow County is not under that, I need to get rid of that, don't I? I'll go to a different radar scan for you here. Even though that storm is not under the threat, the immediate threat, there we go, clear that. Put the track on this again for us. We're looking at counties or communities in the sound of my voice right now, 25 miles an hour. So in and around Ashley, Marengo, Chesterville, and Lucerne. Those communities are under the most immediate threat, even beyond the end of that warning, which stretches all the way through parts of Morrow County. South of Cardington, if you're north of Delaware, you're going to get some very active and very disruptive weather, but at the moment, the focus is on these communities and these towns. If you live in any one of those communities, especially Ashley, Marengo, seek shelter immediately. If you know somebody that lives in those communities, call them immediately, tell them to seek shelter, and the advice is very, very simple. You want to put as many walls and as many structural pieces between you and the outside as possible. Most often that's a basement or a cellar. If you don't have a basement or a cellar, an interior room, it still applies that you want to put as many walls between you and the outside as possible, and that's the case for those areas. South of Cardington, north of Delaware, at the moment, that's right in between and where that storm is going through southern parts of Morrow County right now. I do expect that the western edge of that, Michael, is probably going to be taken down. And that doesn't mean that we're completely discounting those areas where the storm is moving in. So I'm going to get a different perspective and just kind of draw things out for you. In fact, unless I'm missing something, it appears that it's going to be reissued, or possibly that tornado warning for Marion and Delaware County has been taken down. I don't want to call it too soon, but let me know if I'm on the right track.
Let's see, the latest information here from Wilmington is they have expired the tornado warning for Delaware County. as of 9:13 that has been allowed to expire. Checking in with Cleveland as well. They have canceled the tornado warning for Marion and Morrow counties. So those warnings are canceled. We do still have that warning ongoing right now for portions of Knox County. And passing along another report we got here from the National Weather Service, they were talking about some of the impacts that they had in portions of Knox County. County dispatch, according to the National Weather Service, said there's sporadic tree damage near Mount Vernon from that rotation that went through the county earlier. So again, that storm causing at least damage in portions of Knox County, if not also potentially still producing a tornadic signature there in Knox County as well. So I want to give you that view of the latest radar imagery here in Knox County. You can see that warning there on the map. This current one continues until 10:15 this evening. So if this were to play out the entirety of its time left to go, that would be under a tornado warning until about an hour from now. That particular storm, again, moving off to the east quite slow at around 15 miles per hour. So I want to go ahead and we'll put the storm track on that area of concern there that has moved into southern portions of Knox County. Again, not moving that fast. So as this storm works its way slowly off to the east at around 15 miles per hour, it's going to be slow going, rain producing, lightning producing, and potentially carrying with it that threat for a tornado. It's going to be in Zuck by 9:51, into Newcastle by 10:03, into the Tiverton area Tiverton area. I can't quite see that last letter there on my screen. Tiverton area by 10:11 this evening. So again, that's something that we're going to continue to track here as it works its way off to the east quite slowly. I want to go ahead and take that view inside the storm again here just to see what we're seeing in terms of rotation potential inside this storm. We'll check first the radar out of Cleveland, and we're certainly still seeing those greens and reds come together here on the radar. This is going to be approaching US 62 here in about the next 10-20 minutes or so. Again, as the storm moves off fairly slowly, we'll get a little bit closer view here of that storm in the areas under the immediate gun when it comes to this storm still working its way through Knox County. At rotation moving just over Ohio 586. This is south of the Gambier area right now, moving its way slightly north, just mostly to the east. As we head over, and again, the next 10-20 minutes, this is going to be crossing over US 62, likely near the intersection of Ohio 229. So this particular storm still going to be presenting a threat as it pushes out throughout the region. We'll switch back to that standard view of the radar here and give you the broad overview of what we have going on here this evening in central Ohio. It's mostly been heavy rain. We've had flash flood warnings throughout a good portion of the evening up in our northwestern counties, and they're still dealing with lots of heavy rain at this time, but it's these rotating cells, thankfully just the one of them at the moment that we're still concerned with here tonight. And Jerry, as the evening goes on, we'll have to watch to see if any more of these cells do pick up any of that rotation. Yeah, good point, Michael. That we're watching this extension of the line right now. If we can go back to weather backup, and that's going to show a little bit more detail in that particular storm. Again, the near neighbors to the west of this particular storm, they have not seen much in the way of rotation, and that is good news. But this particular storm has shown some fluctuation in its intensity, but still maintained that circulation. Initially, a little almost an hour ago, this was an observed tornado, reported rotation in a funnel cloud from a trained observer, and then coupled with the radar information. That's what got us on the air again around 8:35 this evening. We're breaking into coverage to cover that. Right now, we're watching the storm, which is kind of arcing a little bit, moving east at about to 15 miles an hour. As Michael mentioned, Zuck, Newcastle, and Nellie between 9:50, 9:56, and 10:16 p.m. Now, yes, Newcastle was right on the edge heading into Coshocton County, in that area right along State Route 36 as it continues eastward. Again, not a densely populated area, but still a concern as this storm has not shown a sign of weakening in rotation as other storms further off to the west have done. So looking at that in terms of the population centers, Mount Vernon probably the closest one that we're paying attention to right now, and that's what we're looking at. I'll get back to the map for you. That zooms in just to the area south of Mount Vernon. I believe that Mount Vernon is going to be very close to being in
in the clear, but still technically within that tornado warning, and we're looking at areas still getting some pretty good winds and very heavy rain and the possibility of about 3/4 to 1 inch size hail. West of that, Fredericktown, Centerville, Marengo, Sparta, you're in the clear from this particular storm, but in a moment we're going to take you off to the west and show you that near neighbor that has been moving in. At the moment, that storm has not been producing a tornado in Delaware County, but we're going to focus there in a second. Right now, again, we're looking at this storm moving east. It's slowing down a little bit, and that's why that tornado warning has been extended on nearly an hour till about 10:15 p.m. So we're going to watch that very closely. We're going to expand this out just a little bit to give you some perspective on this storm. Again, really Knox County has been bearing the brunt of this storm over the past 35 to 45 minutes, moving off toward the east. The storm's off to the west. As we mentioned earlier, we're producing tornado warnings in Union County, Delaware County, and Marion County, and Morrow County. Those tornado warnings have dropped. If they pop back up again, we'll shift our attention to the west, but right now we're focusing strictly on this particular cell. So Danville popping up right now. There's Newcastle, there's 62. Utica, you're fine. You're in the clear from the storm. But if anybody looking at these are looking at rather ominous, we do have a camera coming in from Howard. Apple Valley Lake is showing obviously some intense weather right now. We're going to do a little better in trying to draw in closer to that particular cell, but great job by the team in the newsroom to kind of give us some boots on the ground, or some eyes on the ground, I should say, and certainly something that we've talked about and dealt with before. Some of these storms, and many of them this evening, are coming after sunset. That's a problem because while it's not a perfect situation to be able to see these particular storms during the day, it does make it much, much more difficult to be able to track these storms or try to track them at night after dark. And even more of a reason that you should have a plan in place. We're looking at the area. There's Howard right there. We just took that video, or that live feed right now from Howard. Things are expected to go downhill very quickly as the center of the storm is just to the west of Apple Valley Lake. We're looking at there's 62. There's the county line. There's Tiverton, Gann, and Newcastle. Again, areas not densely populated. Beautiful country, but not densely populated. But right now, Mount Vernon is the most critical area of concern. I'm going to zoom in closer still to that area right now, just to give you some possibly some additional streets and maybe some frames of reference for you. There's 308, there's Gambier. We're looking at just the back end of this particular storm, and it's not always the case, but normally in a situation with tornadic thunderstorms, it's the middle or the back end of the storm where that rotation finally does occur. So I'm going to try and take a closer look right now at the storm relative velocity, and basically what that is just showing us areas where there might be wind that's moving inside the thunderstorm in opposite directions. And I'm not seeing a very tight rotation. Earlier, this was the radar scan, I believe, from Wilmington or from Columbus. We were seeing some greens and some reds that looked rather ominous and rather close together. I'm going to try and track that and get that over to show us the one from Cleveland. Unless that's not a good idea, we'll take a look at that particular cell, and that might actually be something that's not showing up right now. So we'll go back to our regular scan, go back to the relative velocity. We'll try Columbus Airport and see if that has anything to pop up. And also, not really working at this time, so we'll go back to Wilmington. That will help us get to some perspective from that particular storm, and that shows hopefully where the areas of green and red are showing up. All right, this is getting a little bit wonky right now, and yeah, we'll get to that in just a second. Go back to the normal radar scan for us. That does show the areas that we're most concerned about. That's the areas in the greens and the deeper reds and the yellows. It's kind of that quick transition from a light shower, if a rain shower, to some heavier downpours and some gusty winds. The one thing that we're looking at, if we zoom this out just a bit, is the very slow movement in this particular storm. It was going about 25 miles an hour earlier. Now it's kind of slowed down and pumped the brakes at only about 15 miles an hour. So one of the things we saw earlier in the evening were just a couple of downpours putting upwards of 3 or 4 inches of rain around Bellefontaine and Logan County, for example. So just an indication that it's not producing a tornado where you are. It's certainly possible producing some hail, some very, very heavy rain in a short period of time. So yes, we're breaking into coverage right now to bring you up to speed and keep you on top of the weather forecast for this particular tornadic thunderstorm. And if you're just joining us, this thunderstorm was producing rotation, radar indicated tornado, and this warning goes until 10:15 p.m. So almost another 50 minutes Earlier tornado warnings have been taken down right now, so that's something that we're still hoping for this one, but until it does, we're going to be watching and tracking this particular storm. So I'm going to go all the way back to Mount Vernon and then move that out. This is an area that have probably seen multiple rounds of rain and some storms today. Howard, Zuck, Cavallo, and Newcastle. Technically speaking, some of those communities are in the Coshocton County and just outside of this particular warning, but that is an opportunity giving you more lead time in the event that this tornado warning is carried on and continued further off toward the east. Those locations also have the opportunity to have their action plan, have a couple of minutes to make a plan, get your cats and your wits and your papers about you, and then do what you can to keep all those things safe as we're moving through the evening. This storm, actually, the past couple of frames, Michael, is showing a little bit of a signature. I don't want to say that it's wrapping around, but it is looking a little bit peculiar in terms of the structure of the storm. As we stated earlier, this one is kind of in between radar sites, whether it's Columbus Airport, whether it's Clinton County and Wilmington, or it's Cleveland. So we're not getting the most clearest radar data, but what we are getting is showing a very robust storm. I do see that this has changed intensity right now. Maybe want to bring us up to speed.
Yeah, the storm that we're watching there in Knox County, as you were talking about, starting to show a little bit more of that radar signature that we might see associated with a rotating thunderstorm. And we're also getting now enhanced reports from the National Weather Service office out of Cleveland. That's been back upgraded to a confirmed tornado. The latest update coming in just about a minute ago, less than a minute ago, at 9:25. Confirmed tornado was located over the Gambier area near Mount Vernon, moving east-northeast at about 20 miles per hour. So again, this is returning back to a very dangerous situation, one that you need to seek shelter from immediately. Don't take it lightly, because again, this tornado being confirmed doesn't say, at least from what I see right now, who confirmed that report, but the National Weather Service now saying a spotter confirming that tornado there in Knox County. So much like how this whole evening started, we are now back to a confirmed tornado with this line of storms as it works its way into Knox County. That area, again, we've been tracking all evening long, right there near the Gambier area to the southeast of Mount Vernon, and moving just slightly east-northeast, picking up speed just slightly, now moving about 20 miles per hour. We're going to take a look inside that particular portion of the storm here. Again, with those radars out there, taking a look at the winds that we're seeing up in the storm, and we're seeing that area of rotation becoming a little bit more clearly defined here from the Charleston radar. Those areas of green moving toward the radar, the red moving away, and we're seeing that area pick up again pretty much right in there near the Gambier area, where we've seen pretty much for the last few scans here at least some increased activity with the potential for rotation in this storm. That's moving right south of Gambier along Ohio 229. This tornado being confirmed by a storm spotter in the area, so no longer a radar threat, but a confirmed threat. If you're out ahead of this storm, if you're over toward US 62, this is the area where you need to be taking shelter from fairly quickly as the storm moves your way. I want to zoom out just a couple of steps here, and we'll take a broader view of that rotation. Again, moving its way along, right along really Ohio 229, working its way off into eastern portions of Knox County. They upgraded that area again to a confirmed tornado from just the radar indicated threat. We're going to put the storm cone on that storm, drag it out toward the east, again moving about 20 miles per hour now. That's going to put it into Zuck by 9:45, Newcastle by 9:56, into the Tiverton area by 10 o'clock, Nellie by 10:13, Spring Mountain at 10:17, Warsaw 10:23, and then down toward the Metham area by 10:27. I want to go ahead and take a look back toward that live view there, Apple Valley Lake. You can see definitely things getting more intense. The lightning, the wind, and the rain coming down at a pretty good clip. Remember, just like a few minutes ago, it's getting dark out there, but this was brighter. The skies darkening and the weather deteriorating there, Apple Valley Lake. Thanks again to our newsroom for that view there. Again, if you're in the path of this storm, that area of rotation there working its way through Knox County, you need to seek shelter in quick order from this storm.
You're right, Michael, and that's advice we just cannot give enough. And with some of those locations, many of you probably know where Apple Valley is, or at least close to that, east of Mount Vernon, headed over toward Howard. That's what we're talking about in terms of the area we're most concerned about. And you saw how quickly things went downhill, and that's so without the light of day. Just really encouraging you, if you can go to weather backup and maybe take a closer look or another perspective on the particular track of that storm. Back edge of that storm moving east or just northeast about 20 miles an hour. Howard, you have about 10 minutes. You saw how things are quickly going downhill around Apple Valley Lake. We're also looking at Danville and Cavallo, 953 and 1003, and then heading out toward the east, and that is toward Holmes County and Coshocton County. So this storm has shown a history of producing a tornado earlier in the evening, a little more than an hour ago, and then it began to pulse and weaken a little bit, but now it's strengthening. And a very important factor about this storm, we do not want to see pictures or video. We do not want you to go outside and confirm this storm. We want you to do what you can to keep you and your family safe, and the advice is very, very simple. So we've got some damage reports coming in from trees down on power lines and barn damaged in Sycamore Road. And in Miller Township, you remember earlier, about an hour ago, we were actually talking about Sycamore Street as we were tracking that storm southwest of Mount Vernon when it just entered Knox County. That was about 8:30 to 8:35 this evening. So this storm has a history of damage. Trained spotters have identified this as a heavy tornado on the ground, and that's why we're taking the situation very seriously. Fortunately, at this time, and I don't want to jinx us, but earlier we were tracking 3 or 4 tornado warnings at once. Right now, this is the only warning that is in our viewing area, and that's why we're paying particularly close attention to that. So we're going to zoom in very close right now to the area we're concerned about. Maybe we can capture Sycamore Street and the eastern extension of that, and that would show the areas that we're watching just south of Mount Vernon, southeast, looking at Knox County. There's Gambier. We're going to zoom in very, very close to the eastern part of Mount Vernon, right there, South Mount Vernon, North Mount Vernon, and then further off toward the east, if I get out of the way here, that's showing an area, not a lot of towns or communities there, just west of Gambier. Please, we're urging you that you really need to take shelter from this particular storm. Click the wrong button there. Just bear with me for 1 second, please. I wanted to go to the north. That's showing the area. Again, we're watching. There's Mansfield south of that, Morrow County, east of Delaware, in this area right here. This particular thunderstorm showed signs of rotation, put that tornado down on the ground just a while ago, and that still is the case right now. So we're going to zoom in much closer to that particular storm in Knox County, emphasizing it can't really clear Mount Vernon yet, but we're looking at the opportunity for those areas. If I can zoom back out again, in and around Knox County. That's what we're looking at right now. Fredericktown, you're in the clear. Mount Vernon, you are not. Over toward Danville and Newcastle, just for some perspective, this warning has been trimmed down in terms of its coverage, but it's increased in its intensity and severity in the fact that we do have eyes on the storm, trained spotters, not the public, trained spotters or EMS officials that have seen this tornado and the rotation actually reaching the ground. And that's why, again, we're paying very close attention to this particular storm. So that one right now, we're looking in the eastern parts of Knox County. Just for a frame of reference, we saw the camera coming in from Howard. If you are in this area, seek shelter immediately. If you know somebody that lives in this area, a loved one or a friend, call them immediately and say, we're tracking the tornado through your area. Seek shelter. Probably won't have to stay there long, maybe 15 to 30 minutes, and don't come out until you get the all clear. One other thing to keep in mind, and it's actually pretty important, but it may sound very simple, take a helmet. Take your shoes, take a jacket with you. If you're in a rush to get those things, of course, take your pets with you as well. Wherever your safe spot is, preferably a basement, an interior room in the first floor of the house will suffice. You want to put as many walls between you and the outside as possible. As I said earlier, not trying to be flippant, but most people are not picked up and carried away by tornadoes. Most people that are injured by tornadoes or worse are just dealing with the debris. If very small projectiles or objects traveling at 100 or 150 miles an hour can do some significant damage. So you just want to minimize your exposure to those flying projectiles. And of course, the best way to do that is to go to an interior room as low as possible floor. So again, we're giving that advice to everybody in the viewing area this evening, but specifically to locations in central and southeastern parts of Knox County. Mount Vernon and Howard and Danville and Newcastle and Tiverton, soon to be in the path of that storm. We're going to take a little bit of a different perspective for you and maybe just recenter things for a moment. We're going to see if this storm is producing any debris. So we're going to look at what we call just the debris signal, and if that's the case, it does seem to be something that catches our attention right now, and that would correspond with what we heard earlier around Sycamore Road, southwest of Mount Vernon, that there's been some debris. And normally the radar scan is really effective at picking up areas of precipitation, rain or snow or hail. But when it sees something that's not any of those things, that's when it begins to produce some of these different colors. Again, very subtle but very important. Then we're looking at debris potential as usually a strong indication that that storm, even a weak storm, is reaching the ground and it's picking things up and then, as I said, turning them into projectiles. And that's what the radar very well could be picking up here. Just another indication of the strength of this storm and the severity of the storm. And we're about an hour, maybe 40 minutes past sunset. An extra layer of caution and really urging you in Knox County, southeast of Mount Vernon, to do what you can to keep you and your family safe, because this is a serious storm and a confirmed tornado. Going back to the lightning for just a moment, that was a significant change over the past couple of scans. Again, this is just the latest lightning flashes that we're seeing. It was ebbing and flowing, or kind of weakening and then strengthening, as these storms often have a tendency to do. Obviously, a very tight cluster of lightning, meaning this storm is still maintaining its health and very strong storm right now, and it's moving into an environment that did not see a whole lot of activity earlier in the day today. So there's plenty of fuel for this particular storm. Michael, I did see that the color just changed. I imagine the National Weather Service in Cleveland is continuing to issue updates on this storm. What's the latest? Yeah, National Weather Service office in Cleveland continuing to watch that storm carefully. They did drop that observed status from that particular tornado here on the latest update to the warning, continuing the radar indicated threat for that tornado as the storm works its way through Knox County, now moving northeast at about 15 miles per hour. So again, they have had reports, confirmations from spotters on the storm, so it's likely we're seeing that continue to evolve. It's a good thing when you can get eyes on the storm like this from trained professionals who can do that safely and provide those reports back to the National Weather Service. It really helps us here in real time articulate that threat that we're seeing with these storms. And again, we are still watching that threat over in Knox County. You can see the latest on that tornado warning there, working its way to the east of the Gambier area. This is going to continue to work its way off to the east quite slowly, east about 15 miles per hour. So again, we'll put that storm track on this particular portion of the storm, continue to track that off toward the east as it works its way off toward Coshocton County. That most dangerous part of the storm continues to be that southern area in the storm. It's going to be over toward Zuck here very shortly, about 9:57. Newcastle 10:10, Tiverton at 10:16, Nellie at 10:30, and toward New Princeton at 10:33. So this storm continues to fluctuate in terms of its intensity. If you remember when we started covering this evening, this was a confirmed tornado. It went back to just a radar indicated threat, back to a confirmed tornado, and now back to just a radar indicated threat. So many times what you'll see with these storms is they sort of pulse up and down. And just because it's going through a weakening phase now doesn't mean that's going to be the case an hour from now. The storm certainly could rotate back more toward a concerning threat as it moves off toward the east. I want to take a view inside that storm here as well and take a look off the Cleveland radar real quick and just show you what we can see when it comes to rotation in that storm. And we are still seeing that area of rotation now working its way off toward Newcastle. This area of rotation in the storm, again, moving not so fast, only about 15 miles per hour. We'll take the closer view here and get some more information on the screen with the area near that storm. It's moving right along Ohio 229, as we've been talking about for the past 10-15 minutes here. If you're in the area of US 62 229, this is the area it's likely going to cross over 229 here at some point shortly and work its way across 62 here shortly after that. We'll put some of the extra streets on here for you. You can see that it looks like Burnett Road is going to be an area in the immediate concern with this storm, again off toward 62 and then eventually off toward Kirk Road as well. We were talking about those areas of safety. Where should you go during a tornado? I want to illustrate some of that here for you as well. If you're looking at a standard house, if you're going to want to get away from the exterior walls, if you don't have anywhere that gets particularly far away from an exterior wall, an inside hallway, stairwell, bathrooms tend to be built a little bit sturdier
area, those are good places to go. If you have a closet that's completely sealed off from the exterior, that's a great place to be as well. Of course, basements are always that best place to be. And like we said, avoid windows, doors, outside walls, and take some blankets, mattresses, or like you said, even a bike helmet, Jerry. If you have those with you, those are things to bring with you as you seek your place of shelter.
Great advice, Michael. And just a couple of things hopefully you've had the opportunity to prepare for earlier in this spring and the summer, but it's something even if you have a couple of seconds to prepare, of course, take care of you and your family first. Excellent advice on where to go and what to take with you and what to do. Of course, your medication, because you might not be able to come up with those things very easily if your structure where you're at is damaged or destroyed by a tornado. Put as many walls between you and the outside as possible. Best place is the basement. So let's go to weather backup and radar scan and show one other thing I wanted to bring to your attention. Of course, we'll get back in just a second to tracking that particular tornado as it's moving through Knox County. We are hearing reports of some trees down and also some significant flooding around Fredericktown and just south of Mount Vernon. So those other areas, if we can go to weather backup and get to that one report that's showing up right now, that's on weather backup or the radar computer, that will allow us to at least zoom in on that particular spot, as we mentioned earlier, in and around Sycamore Road. So if we can, there we go, thank you. So we're looking again, that area, just 661 and Sycamore, some trees down there across roadways. ODOT has got some crews called in and out to clear things up, but it's very difficult for them as it is for us and for you as you're making your way in and around central Ohio to do so safely as we're looking at areas after dark. So the one thing we're watching right now, Michael, if you can press the magic track button for me, I forgot to do that, thank you. We're looking at the radar scan for you. That will put back something that you're probably familiar to seeing. We'll zoom it out a second as things are moving rather quickly here, and this storm is picking up a little bit of intensity, and you might be able to hear some of the raindrops on our roof here and west of Columbus, but we're not seeing the severe weather that they're seeing right now in Mount Vernon and Knox County. This area, again, kind of tuning that triangle or that polygon as the area that we're most concerned about. Yes, there are some near neighbor thunderstorms and some strong thunderstorms to the west of that. The threat from those continues to be some heavy rain and very persistent rain, and of course some lightning and possibly some small hail. But this is the only storm right now which is within the 10 TV viewing area which has been producing a tornado and is bona fide in the sense that we have eyewitness reports, we have reports of damage in and around Mount Vernon and Fredericktown. So this storm is serious matter, and a warning goes into effect for another half hour, another 33 minutes until 10:15 p.m. The easternmost edge of that just is butting right up against Coshocton County, then over toward Holmes County. With any luck, and hopefully the trend will be in the next half hour, that this storm continues to weaken and moves to the east. But if recent history is an indication of future performance, then this storm is going to continue on its way, moving off toward the east, northeast at about 20 miles an hour. So there's Howard. We had some shots earlier from Apple Valley Lake. Many of you might be familiar with that area. Everybody knows where Mount Vernon is, in Gambier, Kenyon College, for example, Danville, Tiverton, Newcastle. These are locations in the eastern edge, or just outside of the eastern edge of that tornado warning, but still an opportunity for you to seek shelter. A little bit of advance warning to do what you need to do to keep you and your family safe. So we're looking areas, again, not quite ready to call Mount Vernon in the clear, but if you're there, just stay down in your shelter for another few minutes. Eventually, the National Weather Service will begin to carve out that warning. Howard, I'm concerned about right now, as is the case for Danville and Tiverton. So there might be a couple other communities. We're going to put a track on that to see as we move to the east-northeast at about 20 miles an hour. Just east of Mount Vernon is where we're starting right now, and we're moving that off toward the northeast at about 20 miles an hour. So I've got to stretch it out pretty far here to try and capture that speed. And we'll clear that off in a second. Right now, we do have some flash flood warnings for you, and those areas we'll get to in a moment. We'll clear that off for you. This actually takes us to it right now. We'll get to the tornado in just a moment. Flash flood warning again for Hardin and Union County. It goes until 9:45. That also includes areas around Richwood and Prospect. Some significant rain there, and that's just one of the factors of this particular storm. But the most urgent factor still is that tornado warning that we're watching right now, and that's the one we're looking at. It's a quick frame of reference. Westerville, Columbus, southwestward, we're getting some thunderstorms, some garden variety thunderstorms with some very heavy rain, but it's the areas to the north and the east. Specifically, we're looking at Knox County, and that has been really under the gun for over an hour right now. In this particular area that we're watching, we're going to move up there in just a moment. That shows what we're looking at in terms of the severest weather. North of Pataskala, we're going north of Granville, we're going outside of Licking County. Utica is in the clear, but clearly right now you can see your attention being drawn to this area of red east of Mount Vernon. There's Howard, just north of Martinsburg, and then we're looking at Gann and Newcastle. These areas are technically just outside of the warning, but this storm, as I just said a couple of moments ago, has a history of maintaining its strength. I do expect the National Weather Service will begin to pay a little more attention to the coverage of this particular cell, in as much as we can watch the area to the southern parts of Knox County, hopefully beginning to fade just a little bit. But in terms of tracking this particular storm, we're going to zoom out. I did not quite have enough real estate last time to draw the entire track for you, but this is moving northeast still at about 20 miles an hour, so we're going to give us a little more room right now and then track that out, perhaps catching a few of those other towns and communities that we might have just missed before because we didn't quite have the right speed. So there it is at about 20 off toward the northeast. That's looking at areas, as soon as I get out of the way, Gambier and Howard. We mentioned those several times. Around Danville, around Gann, and around Greer, and around Glenmont between now and 10:42 p.m. Again, the storm clearly is beginning to take just a little bit of a northward jog and is not completely going to miss Newcastle, but I do think it's going to spare other areas in the southeastern corner of Knox County. So closer inspection, perhaps we can find a couple more roads. We're going to zoom in pretty tight for you here. And then just east of Mount Vernon, there were some damage reports earlier, some trees down and some urban flooding, some localized flooding just south of Mount Vernon toward Fredericktown. But areas, there's Gambier, there's 36. We're south of Four Corners. This red line is the northernmost extent of that tornado warning, and it stretches all the way over toward Danville. Jelloway and Four Corners and Greer, you're on the northern part of that storm. Still keep your guard and your attention up, but right now we're focused on areas really east of Mount Vernon in Knox County, and we're going to zoom out just a little bit to begin to show you a couple of those other locations with some perspective. You're trying to get the radar scan on here and show a little bit of storm relative velocity. We're going to look at that, and hopefully that will show some of the areas which are looking and still showing that very consistent in showing the areas with the green and the red. And if you're just watching us right now, we're breaking into coverage for this ongoing tornado warning for Knox County, which has been up for nearly an hour right now. And this is what we're looking at. One of the things as a meteorologist inside the storm, oftentimes a rotating thunderstorm inside the cloud has the higher likelihood or tendency to bring that rotation down to the ground. That's oftentimes when we see a tornado. And that has been the case, confirmed with this storm. Right now, I'm not quite seeing the tightest circulation that we saw earlier, but still looking at some of that. And just as a frame of reference here, oftentimes what we're talking about is where the storms inside the storm begins to form a kind of a counterclockwise circulation. That is literally right over Howard right now. And the entirety of the thunderstorm, this is the area we're concerned about most, where you see this red and the green next to each other, that couplet, that tighter rotation. And this is moving just north of east. So areas around Glenmont and Tiverton seem to be under the greatest threat from that particular storm. A bit more of a traditional radar scan for you. We're going to put the lightning on there as well and zoom out just a little bit to make sure that we capture anything else that might be going on. This storm, again, still looking rather ominous for areas east of Mount Vernon and toward Danville. Quick reminder, again, we've said it a couple of times at the risk of repeating ourselves in case you're just joining us or maybe you're just kind of reeling what's happening in the eastern part of Knox County. Very, very simple. As many walls between you and the outside as possible, between you and the storm. Minimize your exposure. Take your medication, take a helmet, take some shoes, and of course take your loved ones with you and your pets into your safe space. You're not going to be there for long. This storm is moving at about 20 to 25 miles an hour, so it'll be moving along. And while there are storms behind that, we'll give you a bit of perspective right now. In Knox County, we're seeing some pretty bad storms, but nothing severe at this time. We'll give you kind of a wider perspective to bring things into your attention, what's coming in. So from a severe weather perspective, we've got some thunderstorms that we're tracking in this area to the south from Urbana down toward Clinton County and right across Cincinnati, showing some lightning, and a linear fashion of that is going to catch our attention. We're going to watch that through our late news tonight. But the only warning right now that we're seeing is a tornado warning, excuse me. There are some flash flood warnings out there, not to discredit those or discount those, but the area that we're watching right now is a radar indicated tornado, and that is solely for the eastern parts of Knox County. So that's where we're going to continue to focus our attention. Michael, any updates coming in right now from anybody else in terms of any spotters? You've been a little more connected to that. This was earlier, as we mentioned, a trained spotter had put some eyes on this storm, but that's becoming increasingly difficult as we're well past sunset on this Wednesday.
Yeah, as the sun continues to go down, it's going to be harder and harder to get eyes on this storm. Actually having some new information coming in now from the National Weather Service. They had several reports throughout the evening of that possible tornado. However, they're not being able to confirm any damage related to that as of right now. Of course, again, that too going to be hard to find in the dark and to separate from what could just be some wind damage with the storm. So that'll be something they'll be watching pretty carefully here over the next little bit. And then we're going to keep our eyes on this storm as it continues to push its way through Knox County, eventually possibly into portions of Coshocton County off to the east of there. Here's the view of that storm again. You can see working its way off toward the east, and we're keeping a close eye inside this particular storm as well as to what those winds are doing as the storm works off toward the east. And we've seen that initial area of rotation. You can kind of see that weak little hook formation there working its way toward US 62 right now. That's going to be an area of concern, but also potential area of concern further back toward Mount Vernon. In fact, I want to go ahead and put back in that radar information when it comes to the velocity data or the winds that we see inside the storm. And you can almost see two separate hook formations out there, two separate rotation formations that we're seeing here on the screen. So this might be building back some, potentially seeing some additional rotation back closer to Mount Vernon, back closer to Cambier. And that was something the National Weather Service from Pittsburgh also talking about in their communication channels here. So showing up fairly clearly here on the radar from Cleveland. Again, you see those areas right there where the green goes toward the radar, the red goes away, repeats itself back toward Mount Vernon, that green going toward the radar, that red going away. So potentially could see another area of rotation inside that storm. As of right now, still just a radar indicated threat. That tornado warning continuing for about the next 25 minutes here. I believe it's 10:15 when this particular tornado warning expires. So we're going to continue to watch this storm closely as it goes through cycles of redeveloping here over the next 20 minutes or so. Now, one thing to note here, if we do indeed have two areas of rotating inside the storm this close together, it's likely these areas are going to fight each other a little bit for some of the dominant energy, the dominant rotation in that storm. So that could prove to be good news when it comes to whether or not this stays in the clouds or makes its way closer to the ground. But as we've gone through the evening, this storm's gone through several cycles of developing, weakening, developing, and weakening. So we're going to see how this plays out here recently. And in fact, here's the newest data scan coming in now south of Howard. You've noticed this area of rotation starting to become a little more intense as the one back toward Mount Vernon got a little bit weaker. So that would tell me that this front edge here, this is still the area of major concern when it comes to rotation inside this particular part of the thunderstorm. So we'll zoom in close to that and we'll get a list of the towns and the roads that are going to be immediately under the gun here when it comes to this portion of the thunderstorm. Again, if you're between Ohio 229 and US 36, southeast of Howard, near and along really anywhere US 62 between US 36 and 229. This is going to be an area of concern. We'll take just another peek in closer here, put some of those local roads up on there. Looks like Pipesville Road or Pipsville Road. This is likely going to be areas east of that with the biggest concern stretching out toward the US highway, eventually off to Hazeldale Road, Austin Road. These are going to be areas under the immediate gun as well. Really, the next town in front of this is going to be Zuck. So, Jerry, if we see this storm continuing to develop over the next 20 minutes, it could start to be making its way back toward a possibly stronger rotation here.
Yeah, we talked about, Michael, if we can go back to the weather backup computer, that a lot of these storms have a cyclic nature to them, strengthening and weakening, not completely going to zero, but obviously moving about. And we're looking at this storm exhibiting those characteristics. We're also looking at a couple of towns that weren't showing up, but still worth noting, around east of Howard, of Danville, of course, Millwood. Anybody in and around those areas between Mount Vernon and Howard and Millwood, next to Gann and Newcastle, those are areas that we're watching very, very closely. So please, please do what you have to do to keep you and your family safe. And that's just advice we've been giving over and over again this evening because it's so critically important. If you haven't up to speed right now, we're breaking into coverage, tracking multiple tornado warnings through north central Ohio in and around Morrow County, Delaware County, Union County earlier. Right now we're focusing on Knox County where you see this prolific lightning popping up, an indication the storm, as you alluded to, Michael, might be in a strengthening phase right now, and that is not good news. As we're well after sunset, this storm is still feeding on some of that available energy, and oftentimes the amount of lightning is just one indicator in the strengthening or weakening of a particular storm. Clearly, just by looking at that, the area south of 229, southwest of Newcastle, you're in the clear. Those areas technically are still under a tornado warning, but I don't want you to be overly concerned. I do want you to take the necessary precautions if you're in and around areas well east of Mount Vernon. That includes areas around Howard, especially we're talking about Apple Valley Lake. There's Gann and Tiverton. And this storm, in terms of the coverage, it's not a terribly huge storm, but as we've talked about and showed earlier, it continues to show signs of that rotation right now. And the velocity from some of those locations is showing a couple of areas where the green and the red is still very close to each other. That's one radar perspective. Another perspective right now we'll look at, that comes to us from a different radar right now, and that's one that we're looking at earlier. That's still showing a couple of pockets, as Michael mentioned, and as he alluded to, that those areas, the leading edge of that probably has a tendency to begin kind of fighting or for the attention and the energy with the system of the circulation just to the west of that. Again, a little bit unusual for Ohio to be kind of getting that granular in our tornado nomenclature or our descriptions, but something that we're watching right now and trying to work at understanding how this storm is strengthening and which way it's moving and the greatest impact would be. So that's just something that we're looking a little bit of inside of the storm there, but clearly, as we just talked about a moment ago, the southern edge of that tornado warning has now been allowed to expire, taken down, and they're really just geographically and kind of tuning the boundaries of this particular tornado warning. Mount Vernon, you're in the clear. Glad to be able to share that with you. Unfortunately, we're hearing some multiple reports by email and also by the National Weather Service of damage in and around Mount Vernon and also some urban flooding or over streets and roadways. ODOT has some crews out and ready to clean up. Let that to the professionals. Leave that cleanup to the professionals. Do not go out and take pictures. Down power lines, particularly dangerous, especially after dark for anybody that's not trained, and that's pretty much everybody. So stay away. Cannot emphasize that enough. If you think you have damage and you're okay, wait till somebody comes to help you. Do not try and venture outside of your home. It is not safe. If you're trying to do that, you might very well run into more trouble. So we're talking particularly to areas from Mount Vernon and Howard into the east central parts of Knox County. We talked about it earlier. You need shoes, you'll need a jacket or a sweater, medication, your pets, maybe some important papers with you. Take all those things to a safe location as we continue to watch this storm system evolve. And really the reason why we're breaking into coverage and ongoing is just a continuation of the threat of a tornado from this particular storm going back almost an hour and a half to just after 8:30 this evening. We're focusing and staying on this particular cell. There's 229, there's 62, Howard, Apple Valley Lake for another landmark, right square in the middle of the storm, and then further off toward the east we're seeing some deeper reds, an indication of some very heavy rain, and the radar returns coming back in as well. Take a closer look at what we've done earlier, and this is just looking for some particular debris inside the storm. Not quite the signal that we saw, so just ignore some of this noise or this pixels along the edge. What we're looking at is an area which is showing the rotation, which is showing the storm intensity, and both of those were just east of Howard, but it's also showing some discoloration from its neighbors. It's not zero, but it's not quite as noticeable as it was just about 20 to 30 minutes ago. So not saying definitively, but we're hedging our bets that this storm hopefully appears to be on a phase of weakening and does not strengthen again. But we're going to continue to watch and track this storm as it's not exactly played by the rules over the past couple of hours. Again, focusing, if you're just joining us, Mount Vernon, you're in the clear. Howard, you're under the threat, and as is Tiverton, as is Gann, Millwood, and Newcastle. We're going to put a track on that storm and give me a little more room to do so. I'm just going to move that off to the south and to the west, and we're looking at that still moving just north of east at about 20 to 25 miles an hour. So back edge of the storm, just near, just west of Howard, and we're going to track that out for you. Areas that are getting into other areas around Holmes County, for example. Not a heavily populated area, still very important in our viewership, of course, as part of the 10 TV family. But Gann, Stillwell, Glenmont, and Kilbuck between now and 10:51. So if the storm continues, it very well could take us up to nearly 11 o'clock during our newscast this evening. But clearly the area is closer. Gann and Stillwell and Millwood we talked about. Those are areas right around and east of Howard, which are of most concern to us right now this evening. So watching the storm and diagnosing a couple of things with that. We're going to expand our perspective just a bit to make sure that we're not missing anything. There are some additional flood warnings in and around areas in Union County, Morrow County, and areas around Delaware County. We're looking at some warnings there, but everywhere else, save for this particular tornado warning, everybody else is seeing disruptive weather this evening coming in on cue. But this is the one area that we're focusing our attention on this evening, just to give you a broader picture right now. So we're going to go right back there and zoom into Knox County, and that's the area that we've been watching and will continue to watch for the short term. I know that we've had a couple other areas, Michael, with some damage reports. I know you've been plugged into those right now. Anything else coming into play with respect to damage? I know the flooding has been a major concern, but in some of these areas we've also seen some damage down. One report of some trees down. Anything else from this particular storm in Knox County or anybody else to the west of that might be something to update our viewers?
No reports from further to the west of that, but they do have those damage reports that we were talking about in Knox County. You can see those two reports there south of Mount Vernon from that system as it came through the area a little bit ago here this evening. We'll put the information up on your screen from those reports. That first one down to the south west side of your screen, that was from Utica, where we're seeing again some reports of some damage down there to an outbuilding on Possum Street. They said possibly connected to the tornado. And then further, as we get closer to Ohio 661, a large tree down near Sycamore Road, that also possibly related to this same storm that has pushed through the region over the past several hours. Again, this storm has been moving slowly through Knox County, so it's not exactly been getting out of the area in a hurry. So it's been able to track over these same areas repeatedly and cause some heavy rain potential in addition to that wind, possible tornadic potential that we've seen in there as well here this evening. When it comes to the information that we've seen out there related to the flooding, we've seen several reports from the heavy rain that we've watched push through the region here this evening. In fact, all those areas that you see there in the green related to this band of storms coming through, including back through Knox County, flood advisories related to the heavy rain that's come down. And then further back out toward the west, we've also seen the flash flood threat here this evening too. The flash flood warnings still in place. Portions of Delaware County back out toward Bell Fountain and toward Logan County. So we're still seeing the flooding potential related to this same line of storms that's bringing us that tornadic threat that continues to work its way through Knox County. We'll put the latest radar on for you, and you can see there's still a lot of rain left to come behind this. So the concern will be, as we work our way further into the night, the heavy rain could cause some flooding out there, especially low-lying areas, poor drainage areas, roads. You're going to have to use caution if you're out this evening. And of course, for those crews out there helping to restore power and check out the damage, also caution for those areas too. We're still seeing that tornado warning over in Knox County, so we'll go ahead and zoom back in closer to that. Remains our main focus, really our only severe focus here. If I could say there's some good news with this storm, go back about 2 hours ago when we started tracking this storm through Knox County. This storm really hasn't moved. It started, I believe it was like, 8 o'clock hour western Knox County. We're now coming into the 10 o'clock hour. It's still not even out of Knox County. So this thing has not been moving fast, and the rest of the rain behind it now catching up. So that means this area back here going to start to interfere with the air that we have available to this cell up here. We'll put this in a NASCAR reference. Dirty air. If you're out in front of the pack, you get the clean air, you can really get into things and it catches up to you. You get in the mess, you get in that dirty air, it's not going to be as good. And that's kind of the same thing we're seeing here with this storm. It's going to start to see some interference from the other cells around it. So hopefully that can start to put some of the severe threat to bed, though we are still seeing that tornado warning right now, at least for, I believe, the next 12 minutes here up until about 10:15 when that does expire. We'll switch back over to the view inside the storm. see if we're still seeing that area of rotation that we've been watching throughout a good portion of the evening. And I would say the good news, at least from initial thoughts here, this is looking much weaker than it was even just say 10 minutes ago or so. So we're going to put a closer view here again near the Gambier area, because this has not been moving fast. Looks like there may be some weak rotation in and around Howard. There may be some weak rotation northwest of Newcastle. But overall, this is probably one of the messier scans that we've seen here so far this evening. And that would be at least some indication that we're seeing some weakening in that cell. And that, Jerry, would go in hand with what we've been talking about of that line of cells really just catching up with this leading one, which just hasn't really moved in 2 hours.
It hasn't moved a whole lot, and that's one thing that we're watching, Michael, is that this storm earlier was moving 20, 25 miles an hour, kind of put on the brakes and has begun to accelerate again. It's not an instantaneous measurement, but as we're trying to do is to watch the strengthening and the weakening of this particular storm. As you alluded to right now, we've been watching these other couple of centers of circulation right now. If we can go to weather backup of the radar computer, that will show a similar perspective and a view. Danville, Howard, Gambier, we've talked about those communities many times. We're also watching a much larger area of rain and thunderstorms behind that. The good news after this is that those storms do not have a tendency to be severe. This one does. Still carrying that tornado warning for about 10 more minutes for central and eastern parts of Knox County. This information and guidance coming to us from the National Weather Service in Cleveland, as this storm, as we just showed you, has been showing signs of rotating. Right now, as we've done for the past couple of minutes, Mount Vernon, you are in the clear. But just because we're saying you're in the clear, we're not saying go outside and look around. That is the last thing we want you to do. We do not want to put you and your family in danger after you've made it through the storm okay. And hopefully you took the advice and you hunker down. You're inside, lowest floor of the building, preferably a basement if you don't have one, an interior room, a bathroom, a closet, anything that has structure or walls between you and the storm outside. Especially important for Gambier, up near Kenyon College, Howard, Danville right now, and then Zuck. These are areas we're really zoomed in right now to eastern parts of Knox County, and that's where it's been the case over the past several hours, or a couple hours, I should say, since shortly after 8:30 when those tornado warnings begin to came back in. So I think somebody's microphone's still hot, so just be aware of that. Danville and Zuck, again, we're looking at that, Gann and Tiverton. These areas are just outside of the Knox County line, but we're giving you a little bit of advance warning and advance notice. Even if this storm loses its tornadic characteristics, it is still a monster in terms of the rainfall. We've seen some urban flooding around areas around Mount Vernon and some trees down, so it might even do some damage even if it's not a tornado warning. If it is, we're going to stay on the air and cover it, but just giving you a heads up to those particular areas around Stillwell and around Tiverton. I'm going to zoom out. Give me a second just to get some perspective here, and that's looking at that's from go look at a camera from Howard if we can. Again, Apple Valley Lake. It's getting a little dark. It might be difficult to see, but clearly that is a challenge. I'm not sure if it's a spider web or maybe some cracked glass, but either way, you're seeing an unsettled scene right now from Apple Valley Lake, and that's around Howard. Earlier, it looked gray and ominous and overcast. That was around 9:15 to about 9:30. We're clearly well past sunset this evening, adding another sense of urgency and just advice. Do not go outside and take pictures. Do not go outside and assess the damage if you have any. You simply hunker down, wait for some help to come, and then you can safely go outside and hopefully see what's going on. But do not do that without professional help. It's just an opportunity that really could not end well with the down power lines or debris around if you're not prepared or if you don't know what you're doing. Howard, again, are the main threat. We've talked about that, Gann and Tiverton and Newcastle. We are going to put a track on this as the speed has slowed down just a little bit now to about 15 miles an hour, still moving off toward the northeast. So it's taken its good old time getting through the eastern part of the county, and that's also troublesome because these storms, as do the earlier ones in the evening, have put down some prolific rainfall amounts. Some reports earlier in a few spots, 1, 2, 3, 4 inches of measured rain over a very short period of time, over a very small geographic area, very small distance. And unfortunately, that's the case with this storm, even in areas that might not be particularly under the threat of that tornado. So latest speed and the track of the storm, taking it from now just south and west of Howard and then moving it east-northeast at about 15 miles an hour. We are getting into areas around Holmes County and clipping areas around Coshocton County. And those locations, specifically Gann, Stillwell, and Glenmont between 10:36, 10:53, and 11:01. Please note that those other communities we talked about toward the end, those are not technically under the tornado warning. We're just giving you the lead time as we've been doing for other locations in Knox County and possibly Coshocton County, northwest of Tiverton, north of Newcastle, northwest of Warsaw. So if you're looking at this map and say, I know somebody that lives east of Howard or west of Tiverton or north of Newcastle, give them a call. Tell them to seek shelter. You can always watch us and stream us on your phone or a tablet, and you can do so safely without being in front of your TV. You can do it from a safe location, inside a bathroom, inside a basement, or inside a closet. Again, just those areas. You can stay connected through the 10 TV app, and we're streaming on there live. But you can also keep your family safe at the same time. So that's just a little bit of important advice for you. We're going to zoom out for a second and give you some perspective on this entire evening where we've been watching just the disruptive weather coming through. We had disruptive weather earlier, but downpours, some gusty winds, and some thunderstorms. We had some very brief tornado warnings around Union County, Delaware County, and Marion County. They have now been taken down, but you clearly see the active weather all over the metro and then stretching down somewhat ominously from areas west of Madison County right through Fayette County and then down toward eastern parts of Cincinnati. I would not be surprised if the southern edge of this line produced some strong to severe storms. Does not appear at this time that those storms have a lot of rotation going on. Hopefully that continues to be the case. But we're still focusing, if you look at this big picture right here, only warning you're going to see is the one near the V and Mount Vernon. So we're going to go back there and take a closer look, and that's something that we've been doing now for almost an hour and 45 minutes, and we will continue to do so to keep all of our viewers safe, especially this evening, our friends and our family in and around Knox County and Mount Vernon. So closer inspection right now. Going to zoom right in there. There's Howard again. There's Gann, there's 36. We're going to do a radar scan for you and show you something that we've done before, and that's just looking at what we call the relative velocity, kind of the spin inside the thunderstorm, and this is still showing not one but two areas. If you look very closely, you see a little red and a little green right there, and then a larger, broader area back near Howard. Both of those obviously are getting our attention, but it doesn't appear that either one at this particular moment is kind of buying the other one out or really pushing the other one away. They're kind of acting and maybe fighting for the available energy out there. And while it still is a very disruptive situation, it's not likely that we're going to see two distinct tornadoes from a particular cell. It has happened, but certainly nothing typical that we would see in Ohio, and hopefully that is not the case from this particular storm. Again, going back to a normal radar scan for you, you saw the sweep coming through, clearly drawing your attention to the deeper reds and the green, deeper reds and the oranges in this particular storm. I'm going to put the lightning on for you as well, and that does show sometimes an indication of storms that are strengthening and weakening. This one's still a very tight cluster and a pocket of that lightning to the eastern part of the storm, and that's typical in this case. Normally, we would see the storm kind of strengthening and then the tornado, if there is one, in the central or the back part of the storm. Not always, but most of the time, and that's why we're still very concerned for areas around Howard and around Millwood and around Gann and Tiverton. So we're going to lose the lightning for you there and clean it back up again. Michael Behrens, 10 TV meteorologist, has been joining us this evening in our extended coverage and plugged into some of the damage. Michael, we hadn't talked about those trees down in and around Sycamore Road. That's south of Mount Vernon. Also saw some damage reports coming in of water across the roads. Just emphasize again that it's still a dangerous situation, whether it's urban flooding or whether it's trees down. The people absolutely should not go outside to assess the damage. It's just not the time. Yeah, certainly not the time to be out there and about. The good news is I can't pass along with this tornado warning that's moving through Knox County is that the National Weather Service is going to let that warning expire here at 10:15. So we got about 3 minutes left with that particular warning. After that, at least for now, they're going to let that expire as we've seen this system get messier as those cells from further back to the west do catch up with what we're watching in Knox County. Now, I want to go ahead and go back quickly to that view inside the storm there. The leading edge was the one we were watching with the most concern. That was right here. That not looking nearly as strong as what we're seeing now. That back edge does still have some signs of rotation on it, but something I want to go ahead
and point out real quick is just that back part of the storm, not quite as strong as what we're seeing on the front end. We'll take a look at something we don't show that often here on TV. It's called the storm height, or how high above ground those clouds are building. That first area that's working its way out of Knox County into Coshocton County, that's the heart of the storm. We go back toward Howard and we're seeing a lot lower clouds. So these aren't as well developed. You got to have a little bit more development to get rotation that makes it down to the surface. As far as what we're seeing on the radar out there in eastern portions of Knox County, we're still seeing some decent rain back down through Howard, along US 62, out toward US 36, and in toward the Tiverton area over toward the north of Newcastle. But again, it's not nearly as organized as things were earlier this evening. And Jerry, if we take the big picture here, back out across the entire 10 TV viewing area, and that's where we see just a mess of rain covering most of the region here tonight. And as that rain has caught up to that rotating cell, and really now even passing that cell, with rain pushing into portions of Coshocton County, into Muskingum County, we're really seeing the threat, I would say, for the severe potential here coming to an end. And that helps to explain why they're likely going to let this expire here really in the next less than a minute.
Yeah, that's great news, Michael, and I appreciate the help in covering the storms this evening. It's one of the things that we don't love doing, but we do it out of necessity and concern for our audience and our viewers. We will continue to cover and break into the programming as needed during the course of the evening. And of course, you can join us at 11 o'clock for an update as we get into the situation as it warrants and tracking the potential for damage. So we're going to sign off now at 10:15 p.m. We'll have an update for you at 11 o'clock. Join us then. Until then, back to your regular program. New one for Licking County that goes until 11 o'clock this evening. Right now we're looking and watching at this large area of showers and some thunderstorms, but that tornado warning right now is something that we're watching very closely, and that is again Licking County until 11 p.m. Not seeing a lot of hail with that, but we are seeing some rotation in the storm. We're southeast of Granville, Newark, north of Buckeye Lake, kind of bounded by 70 across the south, and then cutting diagonally through the county. That goes until 11 p.m. and that again is a radar indicated tornado. Earlier we had tornado warnings in other parts of the viewing area. They were taken down just moments ago, but right now we're looking at these warnings in and around Licking County that goes until 11 p.m. Closer inspection right now of these particular cells. We're going to track them for you, and that will take us into a closer perspective. I don't know if my magic track is turned on, Michael. Maybe you can check that out for me quickly. That shows the area we're watching at large, the area to the east of Columbus. Right now, we cannot get that working. If you don't mind just driving for me for a second, Michael, we're looking at the area, a little bit of a circulation just bottom of the E in Newark. Outside of that, we're seeing just downpours and some thunderstorms. But if we can get a closer perspective right now, this area right now, if you look very closely, a little bit of green and some lighter shades and some reds and some darker shades. That is centered just south of Heath. That's just south of Newark. We're looking north of Buckeye Lake, north of Kirkersville. This is central and southern parts of Licking County, and that tornado warning again goes for another 22 minutes as this storm earlier was producing some heavy rain, but it's racing eastward, now producing a tornado, a radar indicated tornado. So if we can get back to the map, we can take a look at the radar scan for you, and that will show the area with the lightning right now, which is showing a lot of lightning. We can just back up a little bit, and if I have control, Michael, just let me know and I can give you a break.
Yep, you should be good.
We're looking at the area to the south and east of Newark. We're going to look there and just kind of move the map to the east, just to the north and east of Interstate 70. And do we have a speed and a track on that, Michael?
That particular tornado warning is for a storm moving east at 25, located over Hebron.
All right, thanks for the update. The east of 25, so a much more populated area than some of the storms that we were tracking earlier. We're looking at it, and if these sound familiar to you, take shelter immediately. We said it before, we will say it again. Lowest floor, a basement's preferable, an interior room in Rockhaven Park, Cottage Hill, Nashport, Earville, Dillon Falls, and Licking View between now and 11:23. This is then including some areas to the east. We're looking east over toward Muskingum County eventually, but also areas that might be under the threat of this particular storm around Pleasant Grove and Griffin between now and 11:37 p.m. Closer inspection right now to the center of this particular storm, just northeast of Buckeye Lake, just south of Newark. This is the area of greatest concern right now, and many of these locations might be familiar to you. Granville, you're getting disruptive weather. You are not under the threat of this tornado. South and west, Buckeye Lake is right on the edge. Heath, Newark, and areas to the east of that all the way over toward Cottage Hill and Nashport, seek shelter immediately from this particular storm. A little closer if we can. Again, we're getting a little more populated area than some of the areas that we were tracking earlier. There's Irving Wick Drive. There's Thornwood Drive just to the west of the Heath. The storm is moving to your east at about 25 miles an hour. There's West Main Street heading into Newark, and we're looking at 16 just to the north right there. Technical College and Ohio State Newark north of that. You're in the clear. South and east of Newark, again, Heath under the main concern right now. Over toward Linville Road, 13. If any of those things I just mentioned sound familiar to you, seek shelter immediately. And if you know somebody that might not be watching 10 TV and might not be plugged in or connected, call them immediately and give them the same advice. Take shelter, take your phone, take your pets, your kids, your papers and your medicine, some shoes and a hat, a helmet, and get to your safe place. We've had multiple rounds of severe weather during the course of this year. You probably have a plan in place, but if you don't, this is an opportunity for you to quickly come up with that plan. And if you're scrambling, take a breath, listen to what we're telling you right now. This is a tornado warning, a new radar indicated tornado for Licking County that goes until 11 p.m. That takes us right up until 10 TV News at 11, which we will go over and preempt if these warnings continue. But right now, we got another 19 minutes that this tornado warning is in effect. Geographically speaking, western part of that, northwest of Buckeye Lake and west of Heath, you're looking a little better. But I'll give you the same advice we provided earlier. Don't go outside. If we say you're in the clear, just stay inside. Get to your safe place and stay there in Newark and in Heath. And after the storm passes by, do not go outside. We don't want pictures and video. It still could be very dangerous, especially since it's dark outside and it's been that way for a couple of hours. Wait until the light of day or until someone in a position of authority or with the knowledge that might come if you have damage, especially if you're without power. That means power lines are down somewhere around you, making a situation even more dangerous. So we're breaking into coverage this evening. We're looking at the Heath and Newark area, central and southeastern parts of Licking County. We're going to take a little different perspective of the radar scan for you. And that will put in the areas where we're looking for areas of green and red kind of close together. And this does show a little bit of that showing up right now. This isn't a sure thing, but oftentimes is one of many indicators that we use when we're looking and tracking at these storms, looking inside the storms. Where we see these colors close to each other, which we're seeing right now between Heath and Newark, a very close distance, that's an indication that at the middle and lower parts of the storm that we're seeing rotation. Oftentimes that rotation, much like an ice skater does when they kind of get smaller or contract, that spin speeds up and then drops down to the ground. And so we're looking at the very least, some very gusty winds, but at worst right now, particularly in this area, Michael, I'm a little concerned about that. Are you seeing any reports of damage or hearing anything from our friends in Licking County?
No reports just yet, but we are keeping an eye on the rotation in that storm. National Weather Service office from Wilmington keeping an eye on it as well. We're seeing a couple of different radar views here showing where that rotation actually is. I want to go ahead and take a view here on Max 2 that will give us a view inside that storm right now, where we're seeing rotation again coming toward the northeast of Buckeye Lake to the south of Newark right now. This is coming off of the Wilmington, Ohio radar. You can see it kind of putting that rotation a little bit closer toward Newark, but we do have a closer radar to this particular site here at the moment. That would be the radar that is out of Columbus, where we're seeing again some of the similar signs there. Really, it's just this entirety of the storm pretty largely rotating to some degree. You can see this broad area of green kind of spinning in toward Newark, this area of red out there as well. And really it would be this area down in here that was closer to Hebron, closer to US 40 out there, where the actual Weather Service was warning for the rotation in this storm. As far as where the radar is not far off from this area, so we have a really good view inside this part of the storm. Again, not seeing anything that screams immediate tornado, but again, the rotation in this particular storm going to be enough that they're watching it with some concern, especially I would say really from US 40 up to Newark. This would be the area of greatest concern if you're in southern Licking County, from Newark to the south down to Buckeye Lake and areas off to the east. These are the areas that you would certainly want to watch for most closely right now. We'll take a view of the latest radar with the lightning out there too. You can see that area of the warning scaled back just a little bit from Hebron now. Really watching that area again right along US 40. You can see that bottom side of the warning there stretching up toward Newark and the storm moving off to the east, slightly northeast. Now this isn't as strong of a rotation sign as some of the other storms that we saw out there today, but still enough that with the radars that we have available to us, an area we want to watch carefully as it develops here in the next little bit. We'll take a slightly bigger view here across the region. This storm not going to stay in Licking County too long. It's moving off toward Muskingum County. I believe Jerry said that warning goes till 11 o'clock tonight, so that's only about 15 minutes from now. Contrast that with what we were talking about earlier in Knox County, where that storm really only moved a county's width in about 2 hours. This one already moving a little bit quicker than that into some kind of messy air out there. So again, this is not going to be the cleanest storm when it comes to what we see here on radar. I want to put up one more product that we have here, just our shear product to see if it's signaling out something that we're not seeing in the radar data there when it comes to just those individual scans. Let that load in here. If you see anything that highlights in blue, that would be areas of rotation a little bit stronger. I'm not seeing anything pop up there right now, Jerry, so I would say that's at least some positive news that this isn't the strongest storm that we've seen tonight, but it's still something to watch for as we see it develop here over the next few hours.
Yeah, it's a good sign that we're not seeing that initial rotation continuing. And as we talked about earlier, these storms do have a tendency to kind of ebb and flow, strengthen and weaken. If we can go to Weather 2, that will show the latest track on this particular storm. The back edge of this tornado warning for the western parts of Licking County, Granville and Pataskala, you have been and now you are in the clear. You can breathe a little bit easier. Buckeye Lake the same. But further off toward the east, we've taken it from the center of the storm where we're seeing that rotation again relative to Hebron and Heath. So we're looking at these areas further off toward the east. And yes, several of the communities in the bottom part of this list are outside of the initial warning, but this is just more of a heads up for you, especially around Muskingum County, where you might be under the threat from this storm as we get past the 11 o'clock hour. So this particular warning is still in effect, even though it's begun to condense a little bit in terms of its coverage until 11 o'clock. So Rock Haven Park, Cottage Hill, and Irville and Shannon between now and 11:15 p.m. So we're looking again at closer inspection of some of these particular cells right now. We're looking at the area, if you could turn on my magic track, I forgot to do that, Michael. We're looking at areas that are just to the north and east of Buckeye Lake, and they're south of Granville. That's what we're looking at right now in terms of the map, and that's what we're going to begin to zoom back in on. If I can get the clicker to work here, it's a little disconcerting, so bear with me for a second there.
You're on, go to 1, Jerry.
Okay, here we go. Thank you. We're looking at the radar scan. We're going to put a little bit of lightning on for you, and that does show a couple of pockets of lightning, an indication the storm is still rather healthy and moving to the east at about 25 miles an hour. We're going to take the radar, the lightning off for you a second and just really drill down and get close into the areas that I'm most concerned about right now. We're still talking about the area in and around central and southeastern Licking County, in and around Newark, south and east of Newark. We're zooming even closer right now. Many of these communities you probably recognize. East of Heath, there is a Route 13 north to south, and there is 16 heading off toward the east. So kind of bound by that area, north of 16 and south at 13, and in that zone, really central and southeastern parts of Licking County. Closer inspection right now for a couple of roads. There's Summit Road again. There is Stadden's Bridge Road, Valley Drive northeast, and Blue Jay Road to the south. Just a couple of frames of reference. So we're breaking into coverage this evening for an additional tornado warning. This time we're really focused on areas around Licking County. More specifically, we're going to take just a broader look for a second here to give you a little bit of perspective. There are numerous showers and thunderstorms. There's some very heavy rain and numerous flash flood warnings north and west of Columbus, but the focus right now is this area, this trapezoid bounded by the yellow and the black. That is a radar indicated tornado, and that warning came out about 15 minutes ago and is slated to go till 11 o'clock. So we're watching the storm very, very closely. Again, there's the radar out of Columbus Airport, and then you see the radar scan from Cleveland and then one from Wilmington. All those kind of converging on this particular storm right now. So let's get in closer. We've been doing frequently this evening. Unfortunately, in tracking these particular storms, we do look at the area of disturbed weather right now. Let me just take a little bit of a jog off toward the north with that. To the south and west of Newark, you're in the clear. Granville, you're in the clear. Buckeye Lake, you are not under the tornado warning. But areas just east of downtown Newark, you are under the threat for that particular storm. So I can take a little bit of a different perspective, and I get out of the way for a second. Frazeysburg and Hopewell, areas just to the east of the tornado warning, currently are not under the warning, but this is time, if you don't have a plan, to take a couple of seconds and make one. And we're not trying to be cute, we're being serious when we say you need shoes, you need your medication, you need your loved ones, your pets, any important papers, and a helmet. Yes, because most people that have an injury from a tornado is by flying debris. Is a lot of times even a very small innocuous object moving at 100 miles an hour can be something to contend with and can do some damage. So just a little bit of a friendly reminder there. I'm going to zoom out and put another track on this particular storm for you as it's moving east at about 25 miles an hour. Let's zoom that out, and that will show us again a little bit a larger scan as it captures some areas to the east right now. Perspective, Utica earlier under the threat, Grandville you're fine, Pataskala and Buckeye Lake you're in the clear from this storm. Looking at it, we're going to track this then to the east at about 25 miles an hour, just east of the K there in Newark, and then wrapping back down towards 70. If I get out of the way here, moving east at about 25. That does show the areas around Cottage Hill, specifically around Earville, around North Zanesville and Sonora. And admittedly, especially Cottage Hill eastward, we're looking at a pretty tight zone there. And this storm is not moving terribly quick. At the very least, you're looking at some very heavy rain. We saw some reports of urban or localized flooding before. That can happen anywhere that these storms move in. The main concern right now for these communities, and by the way, any communities nearby to the ones that I've listed and talked about, Cottage Hill, Earville, North Zanesville, and Sonora, anywhere in the vicinity of those counties and communities, please seek shelter. Do what you have to do to get to your safe place. Another friendly reminder, that safe place is very, very simple. Don't panic. If you live in an apartment or a home, you just want to go to an interior room. If you live in a building that has a basement, that's where you want to go. You want to stay away from windows. We do not want to see pictures and videos from these storms. We want you to stay safe and make it through the storm, and hopefully you'll be able to do that with a little bit of advice and some patience. But again, we're looking at the storm moving east at about 25 miles an hour. Right now, the storm actually just updating, Michael. The back edge of that tornado warning gratefully has been east of Newark, and we're looking at the general contraction of that. It's a little encouraging, but I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. We have about 7 minutes to go in this particular warning. The National Weather Service has not extended that. I'm going to take a quick look before I pass it over for any possible damage reports to see if there's anything inside that storm which might indicate, there still is actually. You see a little bit of red and some green right there. And just a quick reminder to what we're looking at to those folks at home. We're breaking into coverage. Actually, I'm seeing 2 areas of rotation. A little disconcerting right now north of Newark, which we weren't paying much attention to. We're going to watch that closely. But this particular area right here, where we're seeing some circulation in a counterclockwise fashion, that's happening right now several thousand feet off the ground, and an indication by radar that that storm is reaching the ground, possibly producing a tornado. So this has been going on now for better than 20 minutes, Michael. Any reports or updates on the warning or any damage?
No updates on the warning as of right now. No damage reports as of right now either. But what the National Weather Service office out of Wilmington is watching is the rotation up through that storm. And while it's not always getting close to ground level, while this is still a radar indicated tornado, we are seeing that rotation evident on the scans that we see on radar as well. I want to go ahead and give you a view here inside that storm. If we could take Max 2 for that view there, you can really see that wrap up inside the tornado warning as it moves to the east of Newark. It's that area right in here that you see on your screen there, just inside the top left corner of that polygon. That's where we are seeing the most dangerous part of the storm work its way through right now in portions of Licking County. I want to go ahead and zoom in just a little bit closer to what we see here on the map and get you some of the towns that are near that area, or some of the roads that are near that area. This is between Newark and Rock Haven Park in Licking County. You're looking at a really good radar image coming off the the airport Doppler radar over at Columbus International. That's where we're seeing again that wind wrapping around this center point in that storm. It's moving along just south of Ohio 16. So this would be the area of primary concern. Those winds here coming back in toward the radar, those winds here coming away from the radar. So that would be the prime area of concern at the moment when it comes to rotation in this storm. It's going to be working its way, looks like, toward Brownsville Road, off toward West High Street here in the next little bit as well. I want to move this map a little bit further off toward the west and get some more of the roads that are going to be in the immediate area of concern for this storm. It's eventually got to track its way along Ohio 16, if not slightly south of Ohio 16. That's going to put it toward Rock Haven Park, over toward Tabasso Road, as well as Marne Road, and then working its way further off off toward the east, eventually out of Licking County if the storm does continue to keep those warnings with it. These are areas of immediate concern where you need to be seeking that shelter right now as well as the storm continues to push through. We'll switch back to that traditional view here on the radar and get a little bit further zoomed back out as we approach here the 11 o'clock hour. These storms continuing to produce strong storms, lightning, heavy rain, and we've seen the flooding out there tonight as well. So areas out there, you're not going to see this tornado. Don't try to step outside. We talk about it. Don't look for these things coming. When you have the warning, that's your cue to take shelter. The Weather Service is keeping an eye on things in the sky. There's too much rain out there. It's too dark. Definitely not something you want to chance with. Definitely seek shelter as your primary concern, and then worry about what these storms do after the fact. The big picture out there across central Ohio, this is the only storm we're watching right now working its way away from Newark into eastern portions of Licking County. We do still have thunderstorms back down through Washington Courthouse, but it's just the same area of the atmosphere where we had storms earlier today. That storm in Knox County just to the north, it's got a little bit of something going on out here that's causing some spin in the atmosphere tonight, Jerry, and it's enough to have us under another radar tornado warning at this hour.
Yeah, we've been watching that. Let's go back to Max 1, to Weather Main. That shows the area we're watching, and that tornado warning has been up for about 25 minutes right now. It has not yet been extended. I hope I'm not jinxing us, but this storm, while it still has a history of rotation, that rotation in the storm has lifted a little bit into the storm and has weakened slightly. Still, however, we're looking at the following communities, some of which extend well beyond the edge of Licking County, but still an opportunity to make a plan if you don't have one and get ready to enact that plan if this tornado warning is extended. But most notably Rockhaven Park and Nashport 11:01 and 11:08, Earville at 11:13, and Shannon at 11:19, and then further off toward the east into Muskingum County as we go through about 11:45 and beyond. Closer inspection right now in and around the area. Newark, you're in the clear. Earlier you were not. And just an indication and a reminder, please do not go outside and try and assess damage. If you heard some trees come down, it's possible the power lines are down. One of the most dangerous things, especially compounded by the fact that we are well past sunset. It's dark out there, folks. You don't need to be traipsing around in your flip-flops and shorts trying to assess damage. Stay inside. Stay safe. Let somebody qualified to come do that assessment. If the power lines are down, they will be put back up as soon as possible. You're not qualified to do that, so please stay inside and issue the same advice to your family and friends and your loved one as well. We don't want anybody that might happen to make it through this storm okay, then be injured as they're walking outside unprepared or unknowingly into a dangerous situation. Most notably right now, again, Newark, you're in the clear. This area of disturbed weather is the eastern line of Licking County, Perryton to the north, Rockhaven Park for a frame of reference, and Cottage Hill just to the south and east of that. And now, of course, we're heading over into Muskingum County, where there currently is not a tornado warning. Just letting you folks know if the storm continues off toward the east that you very well could be under the gun. So let's expand this just a little bit to provide a little perspective for you. This is the only tornado warning that we have right now. We are seeing some very disruptive weather, some downpours, some gusty winds, some small hail. Actually, the rain has been one of the main things we've been worried about this evening. 1, 2, 3, 4 inches of rain measured from these storms. Many locations, which we'll update you in our 11 o'clock newscast, are under flash flood warnings right now. But the only tornado warning we have at this point right now is about another minute. We're going to track that and watch that and probably, hopefully, lead right into your regularly scheduled newscast at 10 TV at 11 o'clock. And that will be the case if that tornado warning expires. But a last look, hopefully, as we're approaching 11 o'clock, we're going to get close to that particular storm right now and kind of zoom in and then track it out for you one more time. And we will continue to monitor the situation as it evolves and changes. This storm still moving east at about 25 miles an hour. Quick track on that again. We're the worst of the weather just east of Newark and then tracking downward and then moving east at again at about 25 miles an hour. Pretty narrow corridor that we're worried about. Cottage Hill, we're south of Fraserburg. We're looking around Drake and Adamsville between now and about 11:41 p.m. So we're going to continue to watch that as the situation unfolds as we come up just close to 11 o'clock. I suspect, Michael, and yell at me if things look differently from your perspective, that tornado warning will be allowed to expire. And as it does, and it's not extended, there it is at 11 o'clock. So appreciate you joining us as we segue from severe weather coverage of the tornadoes into 10 TV News at 11. Andrew and Yolanda, good evening.
All right, thank you very much, Jerry. And tonight we are still tracking these storms as they move through central Ohio. That Licking County tornado warning just expired. Thanks for joining us at 11. I'm Yolanda Harris.
And I'm Andrew Kinsey. Our Doppler 10 weather team has been with you through most of the evening, keeping you safe. Jerry tracking multiple tornado warnings throughout the night. Let's get back over to him now with what we're seeing now as we enter the 11 o'clock hour here. Jerry.
Well, we still have some trouble to deal with. We talked earlier about the numerous flash flood warnings that are out there. We're going to take a quick perspective right now of those areas. We're going to zoom it out for you and give you a broader picture. Fortunately, the tornado warnings have come to an end. As we look closely, we've seen main area of rain also moving to the east. We're looking at what is a mounting system, very heavy rainfall over the past couple of hours, and that's where we're looking at some flash flood warnings right now that are into effect until 1 o'clock to about 3:15. This is the same area earlier where there were tornado warnings. Some locations around Logan County and Delaware County, 3 to 4 inches of rain measured, and unfortunately more to come in this last round. So that's what we're looking at right now. This flash flood threat continues to be the case well past midnight for those locations, Mount Vernon, Delaware, and back toward northern Union County and around Logan County. Once we get beyond that, we'll quickly go back at the radar scan for you and just give you a perspective of what's going on. Behind that, we're looking again at drying conditions for the rest of the night. We'll bring you up to speed as to what to expect for the rest of the night and, of course, for the rest of the week and the weekend coming up in your Doppler 10 forecast.
Jerry, thank you. Make sure you have that 10 TV app downloaded so you can stay updated by getting weather alerts sent straight to your phone as soon as they come in. Some new details tonight in the investigation into a leaked document created by a Columbus City Schools
an hour, which means that potential for damage in that tornado was on the ground for a long
Yeah.
time. We watched, it was a confirmed tornado, not a radar indicated
okay.
one, and we saw some reports of damage there. Where our videographer Travis was south of Mount Vernon around Fredericksburg, and it kind of fits and starts of some damage through there. We had other tornado warnings and some reports of damage around Radnor, that's up around Delaware County, Morrow County, Marion County, Union County. So again, that area, we've mentioned those counties and communities a lot this spring. They need a break.
Yeah,
And now they're dealing with flooding. We've seen some very heavy rainfall amounts, even areas that did not see the severe weather. That flooding threat is going to continue right through tomorrow morning. So, and we emphasized again earlier, do not go outside and try to assess the damage or take a look around. It's dark, it's dangerous. Wait until the light of day. Hopefully you'll be able to do so safely. But just as a snapshot into how things led up to some of the severe weather this evening, look at the rainfall estimates over the past 24 hours and really the past 12 hours for the most part. Very easy to draw your attention to those purples and those maroons. Yeah, we're talking about between 1.5 and almost 4 inches of rain. Significant rainfall in some spots a very short period of time and over a very small distance. Now other areas, not to discount areas along and south of I-70, they're in the ½ inch to around an inch category. Still a very good soaking, and unfortunately there's still a bit more to come before we finally turn the spigot off tonight. Right now we're looking at Westerville and Gahanna, Columbus. Some downpours there, not seeing any thunder or lightning, which is good news. As we expand the view just a bit, we're still tracking some of the stronger storms moving east toward areas around Muskingum County and around Coshocton County. And then that line kind of stringing off from Circleville down, passing through Washington Courthouse. This southern end of the line, thankfully moving at a pretty good clip. We'll kind of get it along, and that will be in and out in the next couple of hours, and that is good news. If there is severe weather breaking out, we will let you know, and of course, if any of these storms produce a spin-up tornado like we had earlier, we'll be tracking those and break into coverage as need be through the morning. Right now, we're seeing a little bit of shimmy on the lens there from some of those rain showers in downtown Columbus. We have cooled off a few degrees, but boy, is it humid out there. 73 degrees, southwest winds at about 10 at Dew Point, Domterbury about 72. It's as high as it's been over the past several days, and it feels just downright sticky. We will see improvement in a couple of categories, that dew point being one of them as we go for the next couple of days, including tomorrow. Comfortable start, 66 and dry and sunny. We'll see a few more clouds during the day and a risk of a shower as we get through the afternoon. I was trying to play it optimistic. It just cannot will the weather to do what I'd like, so we're bringing that chance of a shower back in the afternoon. Notice the coverage late in the day tomorrow. Just not that impressive. We're looking at dry start, dry midday. It's mid-afternoon through the early evening when we capture that slight chance of a shower, maybe a rumble of thunder. We're not talking about severe weather or widespread storms, maybe a 15-minute shower, but notice the coverage of that moves on through pretty quickly. And beyond that, we're looking at an improving forecast as we get into your Memorial Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. A little cool on Friday, breezy on Saturday, but warmer. And then we'll see the chance of a shower or thunderstorm coming back on Sunday, back in the mid-70s. Looking at the rest of the extended forecast for you, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday back in the 70s. Sunday to Monday, a little unsettled, and then we'll see the chance of a shower or thunderstorm end Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Next chance of some storms not until next Friday.
All right. Thank you, Jerry. It's been a busy night in sports, though, but it's been